Welcome back, everyone, to Red Spotlight Entertainment. I'm your host, Alexis Soto, joined by Peter Martinez, the podcast that brings you all of the latest news coming out of the world of movies, and of course, a lot of movies that are coming out this summer. We are now in the heat of the summer season, and we've got a lot of movies, so much so. I think this episode may be pretty historic for our purposes here on Red Spotlight because we may not have, in one single episode, reviewed 5 movies, but that's what we're going to bring to you tonight. That's for sure. We're going to talk about RRR, Top Gun Maverick, the Bob's Burgers movie, The Secrets of Dumbledore, the third entry in the Fantastic Freaks trilogy, and then of course the new Jurassic movie. That's here on Red Spotlight number 400. So yes, this is the 400th episode, and Peter is on it, and so am I, and that's all the fanfare you're getting tonight. Anyway, let's jump straight into the movies. So this first film is an Indian film, as in it was made in India. It was released in the cinemas in March, and then as soon as it hit streaming, I want to say earlier this month, earlier last month, on Netflix, shall we say, it has since garnered an international audience. From what I am aware of, this is the single most expensive movie ever made out of the country of India.
Maybe. It looks like it.
Yeah, it definitely looks it. So, I did not know this thing existed until Peter basically told me at gunpoint, go watch this movie.
Whoa, okay, no. I'm gonna stop you right there, because there is some things I have basically told you at gunpoint. You better fucking watch this. This was the first time where I was just like, hey, if you check it out if you want. Like, I wasn't even gonna force this review. I don't even know we were gonna talk about it tonight. Like this. So I just want to make it clear. I have 100%. I have done like gunpoint to your head. Better fucking watch this, you stupid bitch. This wasn't one of those times.
Okay. All right. It seems I stand corrected. That wasn't the intent on Peter's part. Okay. This film is 3 hours long.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, the response I have seen from some people on film Twitter is rather unique. In a year that has already given us one of the best films Peter and I have ever seen, and that is, of course, the masterpiece. Yes. That is Everything Everywhere All at Once. I am seeing a lot of cinephiles, a lot of film fans out there proclaim RRR as the best movie ever made, or the greatest movie ever made. And
definitely best movie of the year for a lot of them.
You can definitely tell there's a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of love already for this film. And it is so unlike anything else I feel you will ever see, you, the audience who are listening, because it's also very different from what I am used to seeing, which is also, I think, in large part, a great thing to celebrate, because the more you really, dive into the movie world, the more different kinds of movies you realize exist out there. And again, this is just a wonderful experience because I'm not exposed to, nor do I really indulge in many films from this part of the world. And so I, for one, am just on this ride to just take whatever is out there from whoever who makes it. And it is, I would say, wholly unique. I don't think there's a single movie out there I've seen that can really compare to what this was in just about every which way or shape. But yeah, I want to start off with this movie because it is, in a word, crazy.
It's something. Well, let me do. It's very quick, the synopsis.
Yeah.
So RRR, directed by S.S. Rajam. I'm gonna mess it up. Rajamouli. Rise, Roar, Revolt. A fictional history of two legendary revolutionaries journey away from home before they begin fighting for their country in the 1920s. So the two main characters are based off real life revolutionaries that technically never met, but it's sort of like historical fan fiction.
Right. That's why it's very loosely based off real world.
Very loosely based.
Yeah.
And do you want a little bit of background on the movie before?
I think we definitely need it. I think it's also very helpful for people who may be interested and never heard of this movie at all.
Apparently, okay, this is just everything I got from Patrick Willems' video on the film. Yeah. So I'll shout him out. Go watch his stuff. He's very good. Yeah. Apparently, the reason it was called RRR was because when the movie was announced, it was based off the name of the director, Rajamouli, Rama Rao Jr., and Ram Charan, the two leads and the director. Because these three are legendary in their respective country. The director himself, legendary. And the two actors, they're like the two biggest actors in India. Like they're the big movie stars, right? The movie stars. So when they announced it, that was the working title, RRR, based off their three names, because it's such a big deal. And instead of find a new name, they just went with RRR.
Rise, Roar, Revolt?
That's the thing, though. It's been translated into a bunch of languages, and they just pick words for every language, right?
Oh, okay.
So there's similar titles for whatever language it's in, but it's just words to get to the RRR.
I see.
Right?
Okay.
So it apparently, like, when the first, like, if you think Americans like scream and go crazy over movie theaters, you should see footage of movie theaters over there when this movie premiered. It is insane.
What did you see?
Insane. It like
insanity,
screaming. Like and what's funny is it's the same thing. Like a big actor would come out and people are like jumping and cheering and screaming.
Damn. It's like No Way Home over there?
Yes, but bigger. And the thing is, there's no like connection to anything else, right?
Right.
It's not this legendary character that's been gone for 30 years and now it's back. It's an original movie, right? So they're screaming and yelling their heads off for these original characters based off the big story power of the actors, right? And the director appears at the very end when they have the whole dance number.
Oh, that was him.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Willems was showing footage and stuff that got one of the biggest cheers of the movie because he's such a like huge
beloved person,
big thing over there. And I guess like when they first released like the first 10 seconds of the dance bit, right? You know, the dancing part when they go to the English palace and stuff like that. It immediately became a massive viral sensation. And there was just countless videos of people learning the dance and doing the dance, like a 10-second portion of the dance.
It's not an easy one to learn.
No. But then, like, I saw footage of, like, people in the movie theaters doing the dance.
Damn.
Yeah.
God damn.
So this thing, it's just massive.
It's blowing up. It's already blown up, yeah.
Massive. And I had no idea how massive it was even after I watched it. But yeah, that's a little bit of the background behind. And that's like a little tiny bit.
Well, the next thing should be concerned with like categorizing what kind of movie this is for people, again, who may not realize what this is, because I don't think I was like being hyperbolic when I said that this is wholly unlike anything I've ever seen before. Like, there's just nothing to compare it to. Again, my very limited, film history, obviously very much influenced and almost exclusively through the eyes of, the Western world and, United States. So very limited in other parts of the world as well. But this is why I asked you at the top, and this is a very important distinction to make. The closest thing I could maybe compare this to would be Bollywood. But then, as you say, from what you've heard, this is not, so to speak, Bollywood at all. This is something else.
Apparently, there's 10 different Hollywoods throughout that area. And Bollywood is just one of them. This is another area of Tollywood where, it's Bollywood cranked up to 1,000.
So when I think Bollywood, I think of like big dance numbers, like massive stuff. And so when you say this is turned up to a 13, I think that should give people a pretty clear idea of like how in your face, and let's be real about this, some of the best movies ever made are very much in your face.
Yeah.
And so that's not necessarily, I would never consider that to be like a criticism. So that being said, I would say a lot of what this film has to offer generally seems to be turned up to an 11 or a 12 or a 13 even. And I think it's also important to just like start off with, like, before we get into our feelings of it, it's what is also in it, right? Because this is an action movie, but then also a comedy, a drama, and also a musical. And
the way I would categorize it is, in the broadest sense, a historical epic.
I thought very much that way because
that's when you get very broad,
right?
When you dig a little bit deeper, there's a lot, like there's like you said, yeah, very musical, like very in some instances, over the top action, emphasis on over. There's a lot of romance.
That's right, yeah.
And remove that R and put a B, and there's even more. Lot of bromance. So yeah, there's a lot of different, what do you call it? There's just a lot going into it.
I have to imagine real quick, for the purposes of just like, I don't know what exercise this would be in, but maybe just like some predictions that we threw out there. I would also qualify, I think, based on rules, I would say this very easily applies as an international film, not just because it is made, obviously, in India, but for those who are not aware, this is obviously, there is English in the film, but it is mostly, I believe, Hindi. If I want to say that's the term that classifies the language that that is mostly spoken in the film.
No,
well, that's what it said on Netflix, so I can't be.
It's dubbed.
See, that's why I was so thrown off by that, because I was checking
dub.
the options. This is why I was a little bit like frustrated, or not. I was a little bit confused because there were a lot of scenes where I realized this is dubbed, but I'm not. I'm looking at the settings of it, and I can't see any other options. So what was the? Now you've basically like enlightened me what was up here the entire time. So the Netflix version is a dubbed version. The whole thing is dubbed, or just certain parts of it are dubbed?
I guess the original language is Telugu.
Mm-hmm.
It is dubbed in Hindi.
Okay.
The Netflix version. And Netflix only owns the Hindi version.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I don't think there's currently an avenue, at least if you're in America, to watch the original version.
Language version.
Original language version.
I mean, either way, you're gonna read the
read
subtitles.
it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Either way, if you're in America.
Which again, I would. That's no issue with me. It shouldn't be an issue with anybody. I mean, go look at Parasite. Go look at Drive My Car.
Yeah.
Go look at Train to Busan. Some amazing movies. Some of the best movies I would say that have come out of anywhere in the last decade. And look at how, we had to read them basically, but you still get the emotion. I think you also get that in here too. I was gonna say, to my prediction, I would hope this is considered a frontrunner of sorts for the Academy Awards for Best International Film.
I wonder, right?
Right, yeah.
I feel like maybe it's too mainstream.
This is not at all an Academy movie. This is not at all. That's not their thing. So who knows, right? All bets are off. But if it's already super duper successful. So sometimes it just follows success.
That's true. Again, it's if you're gonna let Gladiator win Best Picture,
that's right.
Why not RRR for Best Foreign Film?
Yeah. So I gotta know then. What I have to assume then Patrick Williams is the one that turned you onto this movie, and then you watched it.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I don't know where to begin, honestly. Other than I this is an experience that is just like I wasn't kidding when I said like every aspect is just turned up to an 11. Mm-hmm. Like you said, the action is very much so. So is the. I don't know if the subtitles that we read were. I think they were done by Netflix, and I'm not sure how accurate they were. So again, there is a little bit of a disassociation there, mm-hmm. but it very much read on the nose. Yeah, a lot of the stuff that was going on. By the way, that's kind of what this is, and it's interesting, right? Because I think otherwise this stuff wouldn't work for a lot of people. I'm going to say off the bat, I think this film won't work for a lot of people because of some key characteristics. There's a lot of cheese. And Peter and I are big fans of cheese. I mean, in movies. Mm-hmm. I mean, so like we eat it up. And now we're talking about like from the perspective of Americans watching like mainly American movies. There has been a considerable lack of cheese in a lot of the films that have come out this last decade, and Peter and I have made no secret about that. But take it from us that even though while we love a nice piece of that cheese, I don't think a lot of people are anywhere near prepared for the amount that will be served if you watch this.
The difference is, too, there is no winking at the audience at all. Everything in this movie is 100% sincere. It's
played straight. It's not played for a joke or played for a laugh, unlike some of the other films that we'll talk about just in this podcast.
Yeah. I mean, I saw it with both my parents.
Did you?
Yes.
I'd like to hear about that experience.
My mother loved it.
I can see it.
And she hates movies, but she loved it. And my dad really liked it too. Mm-hmm. And he compared it to like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, like a lot of the old like martial arts films.
Right. Yes. There's a lot of that in here.
Kind of would come off to audiences as goofy, like they're sort of flying through the air and walking across treetops and stuff like that. So for him, he kind of he's a child of the 70s, so he's seen a lot of that. So he could connect it to that.
It's like a throwback for him, basically.
Yeah, but just like, it's like an Indian version of that kind of filmmaking. So yeah, no, it went off really well. Yeah.
When I was laughing because when you said your mom loved it, there are aspects of this, particularly with the romantic elements and the drama of, you will, that very much remind me almost very identically to a lot of Spanish soap opera telenovelas.
100%. The drama.
Hispanic women in their middle-aged years
adore.
Like that's the key demographic. Mm-hmm. And also, grandmas as well.
Yeah. No, 100%. With the drama, there's just constant like twists and turns, betrayals, and there's music playing describing the emotions of these people. Like there's a whole section where one of our main characters beats a boxing what do you call it? a boxing thing.
You mean a punching bag?
Punching bag, yeah. He beats.
Okay.
I'm bad with words. I'm sorry. He beats a punching bag until he like screams in pain at the thought of betraying his brother.
He's screaming what he's feeling and what he's thinking. It's that kind of emotion.
And
the
music is playing, and it's played straight.
Yes.
It's so goofy, but it's played straight, like 100%.
Like part of you laughs, but at the same time, it's like, well, I appreciate you feel it. That's the key there. And again, like think about all the stuff that we've already compared this to, like with your father and like the old like Crouching Tiger, like martial arts films. There's a lot of that influence in here. We just compared it to like Spanish telenovelas, and especially with like that moment that you just described, when a lot of the characters, there's a lot of sequences where the characters speak outwardly about what their inner thoughts are like. Mm-hmm. There are even musical sequences that do that very same thing. And
montages of friendships growing.
Yeah. So that's a different element there. But the idea that there are characters here and the film, now this may turn off some people, but the film feels the need to play it straight to where we have to literally spell out what these characters are thinking and feeling, and the emotion is so high. Again, that's done to a point. That's what this is. But it reminds me a lot of anime. A lot of the dialogue in anime is very much like that as well. And so like part of me was actually kind of surprised you enjoyed, and I know you enjoyed this. I think there's a lot to enjoy here, so let's just not beat around the bush with that. But part of me was kind of surprised when I was like figuring out what this was, and like, this is the guy that refuses to watch anything anime. And then here he is enjoying this. But do you look? We just looked at like all of these different styles from Japan, or the Spanish world, or the Asian world, and it's like it's this concoction of like different influences that truly I don't think I've ever been exposed to. And for it being a wholly unique experience into itself, I loved it. And really, it's immediately one of the best movies of the year. I can see why it is that people are so in love with it and are so passionate about it. It's really hard to come up with anything that is wrong with the movie. There's a lot in it that you will get as much out of this film, and it depends on what you look for in movies, obviously. But it does a lot of things that for many of the people I've encountered in my life do not look for at all in movies, and do not take seriously, and would probably, it would be really, it's disheartening, but I think there would be a lot of people who would not respond the most positively to a lot of what this is, and that's fair, that's fine. Yeah. People have different tastes, that's what it is. But for what it is, again, trying to measure a film as we've had with all these years, what does it accomplish? What it sets out to do? It over delivers on that. The scale, the scope of this is just, grand is one of the words, but another word is epic for sure.
Yeah.
There's just no shortage of nice things to say about it. I probably need to see it a couple more times to get the full effect of it, but it's great.
I'll definitely rewatch it once I can get my hands on the original language version.
Yeah.
Because like these are like these two massive stars, right? I'd like to hear their voice and their specific performance with it. But I think what sells me on this film more than anything is two things. It's epicness. Because I've seen so many big Hollywood productions for the past few years that are near 3 hours or just 2.5 hours that have no right being that long. They do not fill the scale of epicness that is needed to justify that length. In this film, 100%. It almost feels like an old Hollywood film with like the massive extras and sets and just the length and just the largeness of the story itself. You feel that. And then the second part is its unabashed sincerity.
Yes.
In everything it does.
Which is also sorely lacking in a lot of Hollywood films these days.
I mean, we just saw a massive Hollywood production that just couldn't. It has like 0 emotional scenes, but the few it has, even then, they had to be like, well, that was awkward. Like, oh my gosh, shut up and just have a sincere moment for once.
So there's literally a moment in that movie, early on in that film, that we'll get back to. Spoiler, it's the movie with Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yeah.
She's giving a really emotional scene with a character that's supposed to be her daughter. And it's like, it's played straight for all of 5 seconds before the daughter is like, that was so corny.
And then she's like, oh my gosh, it was corny, wasn't it? And it's like movies are afraid to be judged, right? It almost feels like at this
it's
point,
hilarious
American
to me that
movies are
wait,
like,
stop
okay.
Stop it. Okay, stop it here.
Okay,
the idea that, okay, of all the movies that was afraid to be judged, I know that's ridiculous. Go ahead.
But it just feels like American movies are like insecure.
Yeah.
Like you know, that kind of person that like always has to like joke about themselves, like LOL, I'm so ugly, right? And it's like that kind of annoying personality.
Yeah.
Where they're so insecure they can't just be serious about anything for a second.
It's kind of sad, really. Yeah,
it's more sad than anything. But yeah, with our every moment, right? When they're being, it's supposed to be like an emotional moment between two men. It's emotional. You know, they're crying in each other's arms, right?
You would not see that here in America, because then they would be accused of, well, you know,
there would be a gay joke, right? Like, and it would just be like, oh my god, like just let them. Here, it's what's so funny is this movie is like oozing with like hyper, almost performative masculinity.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I almost take away the fact that a lot of it is like performative, like, oh, we're muscular, and even when we're in solitary confinement in a tiny hole, that's not going to stop us from from working out and doing pull-ups. But the reason why I think they earn that shit is because when it takes time for them to like be emotional, guess what? They're emotional.
Yeah.
And they're loving towards each other, and like they're in tears holding each other towards them, towards, you know, the women in their lives. You know, when it's time to dance, they fucking cut a rug, okay? They go hard. And I don't know, I just love that. I just love a big over-the-top film.
The audaciousness, right?
Yes.
That's the word that I keep going back to.
And what's crazy though is the action itself it's absolutely over the top. It's ridiculously over the top, but it's also really good.
Yeah.
And there's what's incredible about it is there's like a rawness to it. Like you feel every hit. You feel when there's a punch, you feel that, right?
Yeah.
Because American movies, they have over the top action, right? But it's so stale. Like you don't feel it. It's just sort of, you sort of become numb, right?
Yeah.
Like to just, you just sort of see lights and shit and things moving back and forth. And it just doesn't, you don't feel it. Here, I felt every hit and gunshot. Like when people get shot in the face, they do flips backwards and hit a wall, and the wall cracks. I
was trying to think of like what I could compare that the most to. I mean, I guess like this film walks a very fine line because, again, the laws of physics do not mean anything here. It's a movie. I don't give a shit about the laws of physics, so that's one. But two, it one of the other movies we'll discuss today literally became a cartoon in the worst way possible. Here, I would say it does, in the action sequences, resemble a cartoon, but it never loses you.
No.
To where it's like, I mean, it never loses the emotion or the meaning, and that's very important. Like, some of the over-the-topness in the action can be compared to the Crouching Tiger stuff. It almost, in the gory parts of it, not that gory, but in the gory parts of it, almost reminds me of the Tarantino-esque action sequences that we do see with him. And then just a little bit of anime also with, like, you know, how they lift things and throw things. And it's like, again, it's a really interesting mix of a whole bunch of things, but somehow it works. And it consistently holds the ability to make all of it work. It never wavers, you know? Like, this thing just, it goes full forward with what, it knows what it is, and it never relents. And for that reason, maybe that's why it consistently works. There's never a point where it drags. There's never a point where it loses you. No. And this is 3 hours.
Because you know what? I am invested in their friendship. It's awesome. It's beautiful. I am invested in... one of the main actors, the main character's quest to save Mali, the young girl, you know. And then I am invested in the sort of like the way they're torn between each other, you know, best friends on opposite sides. Yeah.
And there's some stuff in the back end of the film that completely recontextualizes what you see in the first half of one of the characters.
Yes, there are fun twists. I'll say it. It's actually a really well written script.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because the dialogue sounds like something you not all of it, but some parts of the dialogue sounds like something that, you know, doesn't sound like a great movie. I think, again, looks can be deceiving in that way just because again, it's like, look at Malignant. A lot of people like looked at that and like, whoa, that was a bad movie. No, you idiot. I mean, it was made to be that way. It was written to be that way. Nothing here to me screams like it was like, oh, somebody made intentionally a bad movie. No, that's not what it is at all. This is a certain style. And the people involved were so committed to it that it feels authentically itself. You know, like, and as far as the script is concerned, again, script is separate from dialogue in and of itself, which, again, to be fair, I'm not sure if we can be totally
it's difficult,
authentic,
right?
Yeah, because this was a dubbed,
hard to judge.
There was subtitles that you have
like
to
two
take
layers removed.
Yeah. So again, that's it's very hard to know. But as far as like from a script and the story and how each part was like set out, and I mean, I can't. Again, we will talk about scripts tonight that are not great and are downright terrible. But here, as far as like looking at this as a whole, from beginning, middle to end, I mean, I thought it was pretty excellent.
I think the way it is structured is excellent, right?
Yes.
You have the initial inciting incident that kicks everything into motion. Then you're introduced into our first main character. Yeah. And it's over the top and ridiculous and amazing action, but you understand everything you need to know about this character. And then you're introduced to the second main character, and it's ridiculous and over the top, but you understand everything you need to know. And then you have the incident that brings them together, ridiculous, over the top, so entertaining. Then you get the montage of seeing them grow and become best friends and everything, and then it slows down a bit, so you see that more. You see them interact. You see them trying to achieve their separate goals that will eventually bring them into confrontation. You see romance, humor, music. The dance sequences are incredible.
Yeah,
they are incredible.
Golden Globes, if you come back this year, this is a candidate for best musical or comedy. It's got both. So, hey, this is the perfect movie for it.
Yeah. And then once we reached what I assumed was our third act, we were only halfway through the movie.
Right? Yeah. I couldn't believe it. It was like, wait a minute, is this thing already wrapping up? And then I use my remote and I go on my TV. It's only halfway through.
Yeah. I was like, what's going on? Like, this feels like the natural conclusion, right? This is the third act, but then that whole second half is amazing, right? Like you go into backstory and find out more about a certain character that, like you said, recontextualizes everything, which then leads into difficult decisions, and because what do I always say? Like you get to know characters by giving them difficult decisions. And having them, and this movie is littered with difficult decisions for our characters that they then have to
major and minor as well.
Yeah, for sure. And they're constantly having to make difficult decisions, and then you get to know who these people truly are through that.
Yeah.
It's such a I really loved it. And of course I love it because I love over the top sincere stuff, right? But it's not just that it's over the top, it's that it's so well made. There's like, I'm not that crazy about musicals, but when they're dancing, it's incredible, right? Like like the dancing is so good. Yeah. The action scenes, yes, it's over the top and fun, but they're also shot.
It's so good. I could say iconography, but also, just a lot of what really calls to my mind, there's several shots here as far as the action is concerned. I know 2 of which heavily involve Ram Charan, who plays Raju. His first scene in this movie, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like a superhuman throwing into a mob, and my jaw was on the floor, just like those British officers, like, what the fuck is this? And I love that line once that thing's wrapped up, and the officer was like, he scares me more. What the fuck was that? That was scary. And then the other one toward the end of the film where they're in the woods. And this is just about the climax or getting to the climax. But holy fuck. There's like fire and he's like flying through it with the bow and arrow and this awesome look. And it's just, holy shit.
There's like one shot where one of the guys like throws an enemy to a flaming branch, knocks it off. The other guy grabs it midair and uses it to knock another guy. And what's incredible is there's no cuts. There's none of this like massive like that you're used to in American cinema. It's all just wide, backed up, and you're just seeing it.
That's impressive. Oh my gosh. Very impressive.
A lot of slow-mo too. A little Zack Snydery, especially like 300.
But it works here. Not to say that it never works for Snyder, but lately it hasn't worked in his favor because the films don't call for it. Here, I think it's very much called for because it fits in with all the other stuff. Again, this is a film that has like so many different kind of influences and does so many things. It's just like, again, it's so wholly unique.
It's also about revolutionaries fighting against evil colonizers, and like emotionally, I'm already there, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely, I can absolutely get behind that. It's awesome, and it doesn't hold back either in a lot of the brutality.
No, I mean,
the bad guys do not get off easy here, do they? They all die.
That's another thing too, right? Like something that also another thing American cinemas have shied away: the violence.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Once violence starts, like if people get shot, they get shot. Blood spurts.
You watch Moon Knight and it's like, what? You see any blood? No.
I mean, I was gonna bring up Jurassic Park when we talk about it later. Like,
oh, the new one.
Yeah, it's insane how bloodless and non-violent that movie is. Like, ridiculous. But again, here, and I think that's another reason why sometimes American action films, you don't feel anything because they've removed the sting of violence, right?
Yeah.
If someone gets shot, there should be blood. If someone gets stabbed in the face.
There was a scene in this movie where somebody was demanding for more blood. Where's my puddle of blood? As somebody's being lashed. And you feel those lashes too.
It's but like, that's what I mean though. Like, just everything about this movie is an 11. And when I say 11, I mean energy wise.
Yes.
Every aspect. And it doesn't relent for 3 hours.
No. Doesn't hold back at all. If there was anything critical to say, what did you make of the overall cinematography? Because There were some shots where I don't know if this is just some kind of a bullshit thing to say, but it almost looked too good. Like, and some of the scenes did feel a little bit like, I know it's a wide known thing that some TVs, unless like you reconfigure their settings, they have that mode where it looks like you're watching a soap opera. Mm-hmm. Not the whole thing, but there were some things about, I don't know how overall you felt about the cinematography, but I guess the most critical thing I can say is, and again, you let it go. I mean, you go with it because again, this is a scene where, what's his name? Beam, one of our other main leads here, unleashes an attack on the palace with literally an army of like jungle animals like cheetahs and tigers and wolves. And it's like, whoa. And it's just, again, that is so awesome. One of the things is, though, because there are a lot of the scenes with animals, mm-hmm. they do come off as very CGI looking, and there's just no getting around that. So I guess that's one critical element I can say about it.
Yeah. I will say, though...
Maybe no worse than Jungle Cruise, though, so...
Yeah, no.
Last year's Jungle Cruise.
I guess that's the thing. So it's not the best CGI in the world, but it feels like CGI that's trying, right?
That's true, yes.
Because you see some modern CGI, and it's like this is bad, and it looks like you were given no time at all.
Look at Black Widow. Look at Jungle Cruise. Look at some parts of No Way Home. Look at Shang-Chi, especially. That got a fucking VFX nomination. Gee, and these are some of the biggest movies of last year. Hundreds of millions of dollars worldwide.
I'll put it this way. It feels like it's not that they didn't have enough time. It's that they didn't have enough money, I would say, right? So what they did have, what they were able to accomplish, it was pretty good, but it's not going to be as good because it wasn't Hollywood money. Whereas a lot of Hollywood movies today, you could tell they just didn't have enough time. So it ends up looking lazy more than anything. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the way it comes across.
I mean, it makes sense to me because I see a lot of movies and I cover all of them. I think you and I, lately, we've been on this tear about like what is at the heart of the VFX issues with most blockbusters, because it seems it affects all of them. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we've really in the last few months have pinpointed a lot of their downfalls and a lot of the reasons for why it is. But I think the simple answer is, as far as like American-made blockbusters, it comes down to a lack of time.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what it is.
Overworked, underpaid.
There are other problems there that contribute to why it's not great, but that's the key right there. Yeah, just a lack of time. Just other reactions that I saw on Twitter that I want to share with you. DJ Woldridge, he sometimes appeared on the old fandom, or the old Screen Junkies. They're now called fandom, but he would be on there for their shows or for movie fights. He says, I can't stress enough how much ass this movie kicks. It's basically 3 hours of wall-to-wall fuck yeah. It absolutely embarrasses most modern Hollywood blockbusters in every way that matters. And not for nothing, Ram Charan is one of the most beautiful people on the planet. That's a ring.
It's hard to argue with any of those points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of, that's what it is. I mean, that's kind of the reaction. Alex V tweeted, "There will be before RRR and there will be after RRR. I don't know if the world is ready for this movie, or maybe it is. It is gnarly, it is crazy, it is audacious, it doesn't hold back. Wow, RRR is conquering the world." Yeah, it is a must-watch. Without question, a must-watch. And yeah, that's... I'm not sure what more we can say other than I'm very happy to have seen this.
I mean, I can say more, but we got so many other reviews.
Yeah,
I won't. Just to leave it. I always talk about how blockbusters are my favorite genre of movie. This movie is a prime example of why.
Absolutely. So we're going to move on from that back to good old Hollywood, and we have a massive success. The box office in a lot of ways has roared back to life. Top Gun Maverick, I believe, opened with $160-some million in its first weekend and only dropped an astounding 29%. That is a number that is unheard of for most, if any, movie, but especially blockbusters in America. It has seemingly reactivated a part of the populace that has not really been as active these last few pandemic era years with movies. And it is a success that no one, I think, saw coming realistically. And I feel like in most circles, you can argue the film is barreling towards $1 billion. And more to that, based on every review we'll find out there, this film is pretty great. The reviews have been pretty great. And this is, again, we're talking about a movie that's a sequel to Top Gun from 1985, 6, or 4. I'm not sure which one of those it was.
One of the earlier 80s, I think.
One of those, yes. It is an older film at this point. So that is interesting. And look, we should note that when it comes to what are legacy sequels? Well, think of The Force Awakens. I would also consider No Way Home a little bit in this because of the nostalgia. You also have, I think, the shining example, Ghostbusters Afterlife here, right? Mm-hmm. Or Force Awakens maybe is what it ripped off.
Force Awakens probably the shining example.
But it's basically this thing where the franchise comes back after a long time. The film is mostly obsessed with like reminding you why you fell in love with that franchise in the first place, almost to the detriment of the quality of the story. And so it very easily, and I felt this way as well, this is the only way it was going to go. And I think I can pretty clearly say I was proven wrong because my feelings toward this film were a complete shock. And Peter and I both had no previous connection or attachment to the original movie Top Gun because we never saw it. Again, it's not a surprise for me to have missed films. I miss them left and right, seemingly, but Peter most times does not miss when it comes to like big films like that. So in preparation to watch this film, I did go back and watch the original movie, and I experienced it, and I got to be honest, it was such an underwhelming experience across the board. There was just nothing really that grabbed me. There were, elements here and there that I thought were, mildly entertaining, but a lot of the film just was maybe too atmospheric for its own good because it was very much very surface level. I could not gravitate toward a single person or character, and it was just kind of this thing where, well, I guess you could see why it was successful because it has a lot of like the iconography of what the 80s became. This is the launch of Tom Cruise's stardom, but it's really hard for me to see that movie and like think that anyone thought, oh yeah, we need a sequel to this. Because there's really nothing there. At least that's how I see it. Now, I recognize that this film is beloved the world over. That's why I got like a sequel. That's why I would say in large part why this one is so successful. So that's my feeling on the original movie. You, Peter?
On the original film, I don't think it's a film that holds up, but I think it's clear why it became... why nostalgia is so deep for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's just so many, even if you don't know it, there's a lot of classic things to it. I got the Need for Speed, Highway to the Danger Zone.
That goddamn Kenny Loggins song that played like 50,000 times. Oh my God.
That's like the sex scene that like pops into people's heads when you think about sex scenes in movies. Just like the crossfading and it's the music, it's so ridiculous. Tom Cruise, of course. What's his name?
Val Kilmer.
Val Kilmer. Like it's so obvious.
Meg Ryan in this as well.
Meg Ryan. It became like a big. This was the 80s, of course, so it became like a big recruitment thing for like the military and stuff. So I get the nostalgia. I get as a film itself, though, just like removing all that. It's like whatever.
So safe to say that I don't think either of us gave much of a flying fuck about this movie going into it. Mm-hmm. And again, we do take note of like the word of mouth. especially when it like is surprising. And I will say the word of mouth was very surprising about this movie, because by all indications it was like, no, this is like no joke. This is actually a really great movie. And I'm like, really? This? Okay. All right. The screenplay is by Christopher McQuarrie, who directed the last few and the future Mission Impossible films with Tom Cruise. So I was excited about that, but not much else. And honestly, was really kind of like curious to see how I would feel about this new movie after seeing the original. Peter, you should probably read the Letterboxd description of Top Gun Maverick. And while you find that out there, I do want to say that David and Alexis Moreno did watch this movie for the first time ever that same weekend that I did as well. I think you did too. Mm-hmm. Alexis was very much underwhelmed, and David was bored as fuck. So that was their reactions. David did end up to go see Maverick with his father, and suffice to say, the feelings were a complete 360 from the original. At least his feelings. So,
okay, Top Gun Maverick, directed by Józef Kosinski. Feel the need for speed. After more than 30 years of service as one of the Navy's top aviators and dodging the advancement in rank that would ground him, Pete Maverick Mitchell finds himself training a detachment of Top Gun graduates for a specialized mission the likes of which no living pilot has ever seen. Facing an uncertain future and confronting the ghosts of his past, Maverick is drawn into a confrontation with his own deepest fears, culminating in a mission that demands the ultimate sacrifice from those who will be chosen to fly it. Starring Tom Cruise. That's all you need to know.
There are other people in there that are very good. You've got Miles Teller, you've got Jennifer Connelly, you got Val Kilmer back, Glenn Powell, who is having a bit of a moment, let's just say, on certain people's timelines. Also, John Hamm is in this as well. Yeah. A lot of interesting people in here. But mainly Tom Cruise. Miles Teller, I believe I said, right? Miles Teller's in this.
You said Miles Teller.
Bill Pullman's son is in this. What was his name? John Pullman or Bill?
Really?
You know, Bill Pullman, who I love for his like iconic role. Louis Pullman, who we saw in Bad Times at the El Royale. He's the one that we call Discount Tom Holland.
Oh, that's right.
He plays Bob in this movie.
He was good in that one too. Yeah. He's just kind of okay here. I mean, he's just there in this one. Playing Bob. You hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
Say yes. You just stare at me.
Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
So yeah. It's a lot of good people. I will say about this movie, what's funny is I just spent a good chunk of the review of RRR shitting on American cinema. And
we didn't have this one in mind, to be fair about that.
Well, that's my point. That was, ironically, I'm about to talk about some of the best blockbuster American cinema in a while that just came out around the same time, which is this film.
Yeah. I fucking love this movie. I gotta be honest with you. Like, this is, again, I did not care about the original movie. There was nothing there for me. I just said that. But this one, this is all the stuff that was missing, at least for me, in that movie. Because there's actually a narrative here. There's a story with, like, characters that you care about. And there's genuine emotion here. In addition to some of... Right. That makes all the difference, right? But also in addition to some of the most... what was it called? Chair pulling, lean in while you're sitting in that theater chair.
Pulse pounding,
suspenseful, like, action sequences you've seen in a blockbuster ever. It feels so real. The idea, I mean, honestly, look, there's so many of these blockbusters these days that are so reliant on VFX that it just becomes artificial and you can't feel anything. Here, And yes, I guess it's the Tom Cruise of it all, because he's got to be so insistent on, like, we got to use real planes and real everything. You feel like you're in a real plane. And I can't compare this to, I don't think, to any other movie I've seen that makes you feel like that. Like, I felt like I was flying. With style, as they say, right?
Falling with like, style.
Falling with style. That was Toy Story. It was just, I couldn't believe how much I was enjoying myself with this movie and how much it was working. And by the time it crescendoed, after the climax and the music is blaring, and it's just like, wow, this feels like something we've not had in a very long time. It feels very much like an old-fashioned movie in the best way imaginable. Mm-hmm. It reminded me a lot of the reasons why I loved No Time to Die, the recent James Bond movie, because again, that too was a franchise I previously did not really give a shit about. Not that I disliked the entries to the extent that I disliked the first Top Gun, but again, there was just never that much to gravitate towards. But what No Time to Die gave me was this feeling of like old school cinema, but just done in this new era with all the. But here, it's like that, if not even more so at the emotion. And again, to be clear about this, it's still a blockbuster, right? Like you're not going to get like the deepest of stuff in here, but what's in really works in a way that a lot of films of this scale do not. They don't
spend the time necessary to build the blocks, the foundation that you need, that when you hit that third act, that you make the crowd want to stand up and cheer, right? Yeah. A lot of blockbusters have found a cheat code, which is just show things the audience already knows, and that'll get them to stand up and cheer. This movie said, fuck that. We're going to take the time to develop the relationships between all these characters, so that by the time you hit that third act, and then also there's a build up to that final action. I don't know if it's even action. I would just say like set piece, right? There's a real build up to all of that. That by the time we hit it, you're on the edge of your seat. Like, fuck, can they do this? What's gonna happen?
And that set piece is basically the whole third act.
Yeah, and then also, I fear for their lives.
Yes,
there's a real possibility that one or two or all of them may die. It probably helps that there isn't 4 spinoffs already announced before the movie has even released that will continue everyone else's story, right?
That we know of.
Bob will return in
Paramount Plus.
Paramount Plus's Bob, a Top Gun story. No, there's none of that. It's just a movie. And it's a simple movie, right? It's a simple blockbuster, but it takes the time to build all the necessary parts of a story to make you feel the emotion. Mm-hmm. It takes all the necessary steps to give you visceral action. Like when I talked about RRR, how I felt every hit, like you feel when they are hitting they are hitting the fucking force of wind so hard that there's a point where they might pass out. You feel that, right? When they're fucking 100 feet off the ground and they have to do those sharp turns at like 5 million miles an hour, and in one wrong turn and they're meeting their death instantly at the side of a wall, you feel that pull, that push and pull of the G-force of it all. Fantastic, really well done. There you go ahead.
I agree with everything you just said. It is just so expertly crafted and also excellently executed in a way you just can't compare it to lately. There's a sense of confidence to the people behind this movie, and again, it's honestly shocking. It really is, because a lot of these movies haven't worked. They haven't succeeded the way that this one does. This is, I think, it may be a disservice to even call this a legacy sequel, because First of all, sequels in general rarely work. They hardly ever, if at all, feel like justified or necessary, even if they're good. Mm-hmm. And yet this somehow accomplishes the impossible, I would say. Like, to me, not only is this like a legitimately great sequel that is up there with the original, I think for me it far surpasses the original. And I think it also does some interesting elements here too, because, and this may be even more evidence that what you said, Peter, your theory that Star Wars just makes people crazy. Because, and this will not be the last of the Star Wars comparisons tonight, so just, get ready for that. But Tom Cruise's Maverick character is, on the surface, a lot of the same as he was in the original film. First and foremost, the man is pushing 60 and he almost looks the same. What is going on there? Can we? What is going on there?
There's still a CG budget.
But
doesn't take much to erase out a wrinkle or two.
But seriously, though, I mean, there is a scene in this film that is very much evocative of the one in the original film, where instead of volleyball, it's football, and there's a bunch of shirtless guys and everything, and he's there with them. He's there with like guys that are over half his age, and he's still somehow looking the best. Like, it's.
That entire sequence, I was looking for him. I will say the body shots were very quick.
Right.
I noticed that you started to see a little sag.
Yeah.
A little.
Well, I mean, I would say maybe in the face. There was some shots where he's in bed and you can see from there, you could see a little bit there, but the man's almost 60. I mean,
yeah.
Really?
He still looks better than, like, I don't know, me. Like, that's very bad. For me.
But it's the truth though there. Yeah, it's that's first of all. But a lot of him, I mean, like, he still dresses the same, right? He still has the same attitude of like, he's a maverick. Like, he breaks the rules, he enjoys doing so, he's still the best of the best. But and I feel like this film has its cake and eats it too, in the sense that it gives audiences, on the surface, a lot of the same Maverick that they remember, but it also does the thing that, if you hear the loudest voices out there, hate, which is you see the character also grow. Like, yes, on the surface, he's still a lot of what you remember him being like. Oh, but he's older. And I guess because he's older, yeah, idiots out there who like criticize, certain filmmakers for trying to, create an arc for a character, and he may not be the same as you remember him being. That's what happens with age. They become different people on the inside. They learn and they become, So I feel like that is also for me an interesting study where, this film was able to stave off a lot of that bullshit criticism. Maybe because at the heart of it, this is still his movie. There is a new class, so to speak, but it's still his movie, and he's still at the heart and center of the action. So maybe that's why it got off there. But at the same time, to me, that's just, the Maverick in this movie is just so much more interesting. And especially because the guilt that he's never gotten over. Again, now we're at the point now, people, if you're listening, we're going to get into details of the film, maybe even spoilers, so just go ahead and be forewarned about that. But a large part of Maverick's story arc in this movie is the idea that he never got over the fact that he felt responsible for the death of his best friend Goose in the first movie. So much so that he had a history of delaying the career of his son, played by Miles Teller here, Rooster, for several years. And there has now been a rift between the two of them. Since he reunite for this special ops mission, and he has to he's in an almost impossible situation where, one way or the other, he feels he will lose him. If he washes him out of this like super dangerous mission, he'll never speak to him again. But if he approves him to be in this mission, he may die, which may even be worse. And so, yeah, there's a lot in here that is just so interesting to me.
But that's what this is what I'm talking about. Difficult decisions, right? You give difficult decisions create characters, right? That's a tough decision for him, you know. Deny him the ability to go on this mission and save his life. But you know, ruin your relationship with him forever, and maybe ruin the potential that he had forever, or send him on this mission and he possibly dies.
And by the way, I love the emotional scenes that you do see with him. And again, it's rather unique because they're talking about, maybe I'm the only person that this occurred, maybe I'm the only one that, you know, it occurred to me. But you have Tom Cruise, who is the movie star, returning to the role that arguably launched his career into movie stardom. Mm-hmm. In a role in a film that is very macho, right? Although if you look back at the first movie, you know, the fact that it's macho, there's also some pretty overt
it's so
sexuality in there. That's, I mean, I guess it tries to like pass it off as bromansuality, if that's even a word there. But there are some sequences
very gay.
That's okay. That's
come on, but it's just crazy how many similarities I think there are to like RRR.
Yeah,
because it's just very machismo, action, basically propaganda films.
Yeah, at the surface of it, yeah.
Yeah. But the machismo also comes with a certain level of like emotional what do you call it?
Sentiment?
Sentimentality to it, right? There's never any point in either movies where it's like, ooh, gay. You know, there's none of that, right?
None of that bullshit. It's all heart and it's all on display.
Yeah.
And to see Cruise play the same character, an older version of it, but also just like, he openly weeps in this movie.
Yes. Yeah.
And you feel that.
Tom Cruise, he's starting to flex his acting chops again. I wonder if it's because he's 60, you know, and he's like, I can't do action films forever.
To be fair, he will be 60 in July. Not yet, but
he is 60. And he's like, you know, maybe it's time to pivot back to dramas.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
Because again, look, we have to also, you know, look at Tom Cruise's career, and especially this last decade. It almost feels, I'm not sure if it was that calculated, but maybe he had a decision of sorts in his early 50s that this is the last decade where I can really throw myself into these blockbusters before I kill myself. And so maybe, because now with Top Gun Maverick out and with these next two final, as they're billed, final Mission Impossible films, you get the sense that he's really like, you know,
he's bookending it. Yeah.
On his like blockbuster career.
Yeah. I really felt that with the two-parter ending that he's doing for what do you call it? Mission Impossible. Because I'm telling you right now, if he was 40, he'd do 10 more. He would not be ending it. But the fact that he's like, no, we're ending the franchise. I'm coming out back for one last hurrah with Top Gun, like the action film that started his career. It does feel as sort of like a bow to those kinds of films for him. A bow to running Tom Cruise. Running Tom Cruise is retiring, but maybe not regular Tom Cruise.
That third act was some of the best stuff I've seen in a movie. Downright exhilarating to the point where I just honestly was at the edge of my seat. And it is, you know, in essence, the same kind of maybe just exactly the same even as the Death Star trench run in A New Hope.
You know what it made me think? Maybe someone figures this out. Maybe they would have done it with their what was it called? Rogue Squadron movie. Why not have pilots like fly in the air like in jets? And then like use that footage for Star Wars. like digitally like take them out, like film them in the air flying, and then like superimpose the CG around them like they're in space. I bet that would add a lot to the intensity of the dogfights within Star Wars. I'm surprised. I don't know. Like, I think that would be pretty cool.
Too bad. I don't know if it's even too bad. I'm not sure that film will ever get made.
No, it'll never get made. But I'm just saying someone should do it.
Well, we got this, right?
Yeah.
And this is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I also want to say the supporting cast was actually pretty entertaining. Again, there's not much to them. There really isn't an intent to be there more than just, the team. But the personalities that were collected was always interesting, at least. I mean, I never found I know with a lot of these blockbusters these days, there tends to be this thing where they have supporting casts, one of which we'll get to later on into this episode, but there tend to be supporting casts in a lot of these big budgeted blockbusters that not only do absolutely nothing, but end up becoming a hindrance to my overall enjoyment because so much of the film is taken up by me looking at people I don't care about.
Yeah.
That happens in a lot of movies. I can think of Independence Day Resurgence. I can definitely think of another movie we'll talk about tonight. Hey, I'll even say it, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. That's a perfect example of one. There are plenty of others, that's for sure. But here, I can't say the same thing happens because I actually find all of them rather riveting.
Well, I think what works for it is that they give the characters appropriate time, right? Like, if you're there just to say a cool line every now and then, that's what you do, right? And we're not going to give you any more time than that. You're there for your quick 5, and then that's it. 5 minutes, you're done. Now, other characters that are more important to the plot get more. And then, of course, Tom Cruise gets the most. I feel like a lot of movies don't understand this. Like, it's okay to add a character that's really only going to be there, like, in the background.
I mean, every movie used to do that.
Yeah. Like, it's okay. But it feels like now it's like if you include 20 characters, like, they all got to have something. And it's like, no, like, what's wrong with a nice bit character, right? That's just there for a few minutes, but leaves a large impression. That's perfect, right? Characters should only be in the story as much as they are needed for the story. And it's so strange because it's like movies stopped wanting to give character arcs, but they also recognize that if you include a character, they have to be there for a while. So, like another movie, we keep bringing it up. There's a lot of characters doing a lot of things, and none of it matters. Right.
Well, technically 2 movies. I feel we could. We discuss tonight.
We can throw in 2. Let's be real.
Yeah.
And it's so strange, right? We're here. You get like there's a main character, right? Mm-hmm. There's the love interest. Love interest gets as much time as the love interest needs, and that's it. Mm-hmm. Because the real love story is between a man and his dead friend's son. And that's where the development goes. Are there other pilots in there that have, Hangman and all of them? Sure. But they get as much as needed, right? You get the gist of them. They throw out lines just enough to care, but that's it, right? We're not trying to give each one of these characters this massive character arc, right? Like, these 2 characters need to go off and do this, and this one needs to do this. No. You got Tom, you got Miles Teller, and that's where you're at. Like, that's it right there. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that also happens It also helps make a lot of the other stuff really entertaining, and just like it's there for as long as it's needed to be there. I like the stuff with Hangman.
Yeah.
Glenn Powell was really good in that role. I noticed a lot of people really liked him. We mentioned Lewis Pullman as Bob. Hilarious name for a I guess a call name for an aviator is Bob.
Which, I mean, when you're going in top secret missions, I don't know if you can do that.
Yeah. But there's small little things here and there. Like Hangman has loves being a dick to everybody involved, even
He
one
doesn't
of the
play
female
well with
aviators.
others. Yeah. And so then what does he do at the end? He saves them.
Yeah.
That's good. That's it. That's all we need.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The movie's not called Hangman. It's called Maverick.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, it's also not as gay as the first one was. With a lot of the
I don't know. When Miles Teller does that little jig when they're playing football, I don't know.
What did that seem like to you? An invitation of some sort? What were you saying about that moment? Okay,
that slow motion, like I don't. Okay, whatever.
They were all doing it, to be fair. But then again, maybe that proves your point.
Okay,
even the stuff.
You know what took away from the gayness? They had a woman on the team. I think
you're gonna blame the woman. Really?
Yes,
you're gonna do that?
It is women's fault. All I'm saying is, I think if you remove her from the movie, it's the exact same movie, a lot more gay. But because it's like, yeah, in that beach scene, there's a lady there too, so it's like too much hetero vibes when she's in the area.
She ruined it for you, basically.
Yeah.
Again, as you mentioned, Jennifer Connelly does exactly what she's given here to do and be, and yet here's the thing: like usually, it's very cliche. There's not anything really, I think, unique about the dynamic with Cruise and with Connelly, and yet somehow it works.
Yeah.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, obviously, I agree. Like, there's nothing groundbreaking about it. Very cliche, the whole relationship. But you got a powerhouse like Tom Cruise, Connelly, and a script and movie that understands what it's doing. They give it just the right amount of, attention and development. Not too much, not too little, where, it's enough to be like, wow, like, I care about them, but it also doesn't overshadow the rest of the movie, right?
I do not know how much attention this has received. I was watching Double Toasted's retro review of the original movie, and they played a clip. One of the, I guess, more memorable part of the first film was when they're at that bar, with Meg Ryan and Goose and the kid Rooster, and they all sing, Great Balls of Fire. Before then, there's a conversation with, Meg Ryan and Tom Cruise, and she brings up this girl named Penny, and Jennifer Connelly's character is called Penny, and it's well established in the movie Maverick that those two have been an on-again, off-again thing for a very long time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I think that's the girl.
Most likely, yeah. Yeah. Or not. I don't know.
I mean, who cares, really? But, I mean,
that would be
a little
bit of
like
thing.
Connective tissue. Yeah. To bridge those two together. I also really loved Val Kilmer's inclusion in this.
I was surprised because, I mean, I knew going in Val Kilmer's current health issues, right? Mm-hmm. So I thought, like, the whole staring at him on the wall in his photo, like, that would be it, right?
Right.
It would just be like, oh, Iceman recommended you. And it's like, okay, it's a little wink in the nod. He can't really be here. He's not in the same condition. So it's like, okay, that's it. But then he was texting him and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. A little further.
He's around.
And then he's like, I need to talk to you. I was like, oh.
I was like, what? Really?
What are we doing? Because he cannot talk. And that's one of the things, like, in real life, the health issues he's had, he's lost his ability really to speak. And I was amazed at like, oh wow, like they incorporated it sort of in order to have him there and have him act and have this great moment. I loved that moment with
right?
him and Tom Cruise. It caught me by surprise, and I think it really, really worked.
I agree with you all the same, and in some ways it was far more powerful considering the fact that he had to basically use a keyboard to communicate with Tom Cruise. And one of the ones that I think made it all the more apparent was when clearly Iceman could tell that Maverick is still holding on to the same burden or guilt that he had from the original film. And he typed in, "It's time to let go." And the camera avoids. We see Maverick look at that. We don't see what Iceman's actually written yet. And then we pan to, not pan, but we cut to the actual screen that says it's time to let go. And then even go back to it to kind of give it even more emphasis and power to it. Which is basically the crux of where Maverick has always been. Like he's just refused to let go of the guilt he's had for, what, 30 years? 20, 30 years?
30 plus.
Yeah, basically.
It is time. Holy shit.
Right? But those two, I mean, it was just a very loving camaraderie between the two of them. Again, I think that's the moment where, David told me he went to go see this with his father. And he told me that his father actually said that, like, this moment that I'm speaking of, and it really encapsulates the whole film and what his father said, and that is that this is basically a chick flick for guys.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest. That's what dad movies are.
Yeah.
There's chick flicks and dad movies. That's just kind of what we call them. But like, yeah, that's what it is. That's great.
Yeah. Also, I wasn't sure. Again, I knew that he couldn't speak, and so there is a moment where the character does speak, but I don't think it was him. I think I did read or hear that it was his son, Val Kilmer's son, that provided the voice, right?
I have no idea. I don't know.
Because when I saw it on screen, it very much felt as if, oh, shit, he did, like, he actually spoke? Mm-hmm. Like, that has to hurt him. But then maybe it makes more sense that the voice was done through some other means, even though it looked exactly like Val Kilmer was. Maybe he could have been mouthing it and it was dubbed. I don't know. It didn't come off as a dubbed scene at all.
Maybe that's like the small amount he can get out.
It could be right too. Now. I mean, and that was a great line too. So tell me who's the better pilot or whatever it was.
He's like, it was a nice moment. Don't ruin it.
Right. There's small moments of humor here and there that really, really work. I know one of the ones that happened earlier in the film was after basically Maverick crashed and then he walks into this diner. Hilariously, everybody's like looking at him. And then he asks where he is. And one of the little boys, I guess, just thought he was looking at an alien, like said Earth, which is really, really funny. So, yeah. I also want to say here that the VFX are spectacular.
Oh, yeah.
I did not notice a flaw. And let's be real, with blockbusters, that is unheard of these days, to just not notice a single flaw in there somewhere. Also, the score. You hear a lot of, the themes from the original film. But then you also have Hans Zimmer, who's primarily composing this. And it's just like, man, I don't know what's happened to that man lately, but like every score he's cranking out is just beautiful. I think much more to my preferences and what I look for in a musical score than what he's mostly known for, which is the blah of like, Interstellar or even
there's never a moment where it's like the enemy is approaching. Like there's none of that.
No,
which
not
is
at
great.
all.
No, I agree. The score. Yeah. Fantastic.
And it just blasts that main theme as triumphantly as possible, and it works.
Oh, it works so.
Yeah. So again, this is coming off the James Bond score, "For No Time to Die," which was amazing.
Oh, I really love that one. Yeah.
And of course, Dune, which he won another Oscar for, his second Oscar. So he's on a roll. with I guess we'll forgive whatever happened with The Lion King 2019.
Well, we'll see when The Lion King 2 Simba's Pride live action remake.
Yeah. So there's that. What was it else? Was there anything else? No, I think that's about it. It's just like it's the kind of film you go and see and you pump your fist up to whatever's happening. It's really the definition of a crowd pleaser.
Yeah. The first two were the fist pumping films.
Let's be real about this. I can't even pretend as if like I can like deny what my favorite films of the year so far are, and that includes RRR and Top Gun Maverick in my top 4, and then right above it is The Batman and Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's just
it's crazy, right? Because like I like to play coy.
Yeah, we all do
every year. Yeah, for sure. But like this year, it's just like, no, these are just great. Like I can't. Like my best film isn't a secret, and then like everything under it isn't a secret. It's like no, like there's just been like some legitimately great films this year. So
yeah, even I mean,
it's hard to maneuver.
Up until recently, I don't think there's much to be angry at with the number of films that I've seen this year.
No.
If anything, there are things to be critical about, but like, I've yet to see a movie that I've absolutely hated. There have been a few that have like bored me. Let's be real about that. And we'll get to it. But for the most part, it's been pretty phenomenal. Yeah, really.
I'll say I haven't been
enraged?
Disappointed.
Not yet. Yes, you haven't been disappointed yet.
Because every year there's always a film where I'm like, that looks pretty good. And then I see it and it's just like, oh no.
Well, yes and no. We'll get to it at the very end. It's kind of a promise that was made on a very high profile trailer, and
well, I'll say I haven't been disappointed as far as the quality of film.
Yeah, basically.
When I think a film looks bad, and it turns out bad,
yeah, that's true.
But so far, every film that I'm like, this is gonna be great, has been like, oh, it's great. Yeah. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's where we're at. So we're now going to transition on to our third of 5 films tonight, and this is the Bob's Burgers movie. So Bob's Burgers is part of the animation nomination lineup for Fox Television Network.
Well, I was going to say Bob's Burgers, the first Disney animated feature since Winnie the Pooh.
You mean the first 2D animated film since Winnie the Pooh? Yes.
Oh, yeah, yes, first 2D.
Yes, the first 2D theatrical animated release since the Winnie the Pooh film from 2011, over 10 years ago. That is correct. So, speaking of over 10 years ago, Bob's Burgers has, I think, just finished its 12th season on television. And it is something that I had no prior connection to aside from an episode here or there. Not at all glued into the dynamic of the show per se. So I didn't necessarily go into this with much fanfare or expectation. So there's that. But again, I like adult animation comedies of this variety. Like in the past, I've enjoyed shows like, Family Guy and American Dad and Futurama and others King of the Hill. Yes, I forgot about King of the Hill, especially. So
I adore King of the Hill.
So I mean, there really wasn't much hesitation for me to go see this because I just realized, or I just knew, like, yeah, this is going to be a pretty good watch. And it was. So we'll get into that. And again, I want to get into also Peter's history with this show because evidently this is like, this is comfort food.
Oh my God. If there ever was anything, I adore Bob's Burgers. I really, really love it. It's the show that I can just throw on any moment of any time of any day. And it's just, it's such a cozy show to me. It's about this cute little family, and they're all insane, and I love it. It's about losers who know they're losers, and that's okay. None of them are good at what they do, but they all love doing what they do, so they keep on doing it. And I think that's great.
Yeah. So you've seen every single episode of this show?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
100%.
Okay.
Let me get to the letterbox. The Bob's Burgers movie. Get your buns in theaters. When a ruptured water main creates an enormous sinkhole right in front of Bob's Burgers, it blocks the entrance indefinitely and ruins the Belchers' plans for a successful summer. While Bob and Linda struggle to keep the business afloat, the kids try to solve a mystery that could save their family's restaurant. As these dangers mount, these underdogs help each other find hope and fight to get back behind the counter where they belong. Yeah. Starring H. John Benjamin, Kristen Schaal, John Roberts, Dan Mintz, Eugene Meerman, and a lot of guest voices. But yeah, the Bob's Burgers movie.
This was absolutely hilarious and also adorable and sweet and endearing as well. This is a very endearing family, lovable too, and also kind of hopeless, but that's part of the appeal and that's part of the charm. And yet they somehow work together to get through their trials and tribulations. I mean, basically, if anything, this I am not overly let me see here. I can't say that I've seen much of The Simpsons or The Simpsons movie, so I can't compare it to that. But usually when you have like theatrical versions of theatrical installments of like shows, like let's say the Wild Thornberrys movie or the SpongeBob SquarePants movies or Rugrats or maybe the Hey Arnold movie, they tend to be a common thing people say about them is they tend to be like extended episodes of their shows. Some people mean that as a negative. I don't take it as that in any of these circumstances or any of these situations, shall we say. But for the most part, if you're going to watch a movie, not adaptation, but a movie installment of a show, you probably are, for the most part, going to be a fan of that show. Otherwise, you may not want to go see this movie. That being said, that's not universally the case because I don't watch the show. I watched this movie. I got what I needed to get almost immediately, and I kind of loved it. It was pretty great. And one of the things that I was quite surprised with, again, not knowing I was stunned at first, but then the more it happened, the more I realized this has to be a regular thing with the show then. There were musical numbers.
Every episode has musical numbers.
Every episode has musical numbers?
Every single one.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And so at first I was like, that's an interesting choice. I wasn't expecting to have like full on musical numbers in this movie, but I got them and I got to say they were pretty excellent.
They're a very musical family.
They seem to be. Disney, if you don't have another movie, throw in one of the songs for consideration for the Academy Awards.
Yeah. The Summer of Our Lives, or what was it called?
Something. Yeah, but it was there were great songs all throughout, and they're performed wonderfully, and the animation is pretty sleek. I don't know how different it was in comparison to the show.
It's funny, people always point out the animation jump from TV to movie. And they always point out how, like, the main thing is that just shadows are added.
And that's what happened.
In TV, there's no shadows, but in the movies, there's shadows. And there's, like, moments where there's, like, CG, right? Like, big, where the camera's moving around and stuff like that. But yeah, for the most part, it's the show's animation, but bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the world you're familiar with, but very much on, to fit the big screen instead of the small screen, as it were. And I thought it looked exceptional. It's pretty great. the animation.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say I love the movie.
Yeah.
Clearly, it was made for me. I know you haven't seen a lot of
most of Bob's Burgers, honestly.
Bob's Burgers, but it's not so much that there was like cameos and callbacks, but it's just a lot of what has happened in the show, like characters and stuff. Like they were there, like Officer Bosco. I think he's introduced like in the first season because across the street there's a bank robbery, and he's asking for food, so they get he gets burgers from Bob, so then Bob has to take him the food, then he takes him hostage. Like that's a whole episode, and the one who takes him hostage is Mickey, the carny. He started out as a bank robber, and then once he got out, he worked as a carny. So there's little character relationships that have like grown throughout. What are they called? The biker gang. That they're also like a recurring characters in the show. So there's just a lot. Mr. Fishoder, their landlord, they're constantly behind on rent. Just all these characters. Even his brother, played by Zach Galifianakis, is a regular.
Oh yeah.
And his girlfriend, played by Jordan Peele, was also a regular. I was surprised she was even here. Well, she was just like a phone call, but I was like, oh my god.
No, there's a lot of voices for these characters are so beyond perfect. It's just hard to describe. Like they don't necessarily have to say anything funny. But if they say it in a funny way, it becomes funny.
They have this way of talking that is just so funny to me. And it's so ridiculous. It's too hard to describe, so I'm not even gonna try. But it's just the way that they talk to each other. Not even necessarily what they're saying, but the way that they say it always makes me laugh. But it's also great voice acting. I really,
it really is. Yes,
voice actor. Linda's like my favorite character. She's so funny.
Linda's hilarious. Just like. Oh gosh, it's just so funny to me. Yeah. Go ahead, continue.
But yeah, no. This is. It's one of those where, I'll say, it's because we've talked about like. Well, you mentioned like Family Guy, American Dad, Futurama, Simpsons, and stuff. Futurama ended. So I can't really bring them into the mix, although I guess they're coming back. But
and that's happened before. They've ended and come back before.
It's their thing, you know. But all the other shows, I think, kind of jumped the shark eventually, and then with at least one of them, I never even liked it to begin with. But
can we put this into perspective? The Simpsons is I think they are about to start their 34th season of television.
Yeah.
Their 34th season. Family Guy, I believe, is about to start their 23rd season. Both of those shows, it's like, okay, let's look at it this way. I think there's a direct through line with like, I know that not everybody feels the same as to like whether or not Family Guy was ever great, but I certainly did feel like it was. But when you look at Family Guy, when you look at what was it? Family Guy and The Simpsons, then also SpongeBob SquarePants.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Of course, SpongeBob SquarePants. But I guess with all of those, and I would include Futurama in this. Even if they didn't start off doing massive wacky shit, they eventually got there.
Yeah.
Like The Simpsons was just supposed to be like a regular family, right? But then eventually they do jump the shark and they do everything and crazy, go to the moon and back, meet every celebrity that's ever existed. all that stuff. Bob's Burgers has never done that, right? Like, nothing happens to them beyond the realm of what's possible for, a small business owning family that lives on a Wonder Wharf. Like, that's it. Because you see this movie, some exciting stuff does happen, but it's not like the Simpsons movie level of ridiculousness, right? Like, some crazy stuff happens, but it's within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, it doesn't go as big as other films have gone. No,
it doesn't go big in that way. And I'm so happy, because that, to me, that's the appeal of
Bob's Burgers.
These characters and these shows. The biggest thing that they have to deal with is, how are we gonna make rent?
Mm-hmm.
But they're these big, loving, happy people with just big personalities, with very human problems, right? Like Tina, her thing is always like, she's a teenage girl and she's beyond awkward, maybe even slightly autistic, and she's just in love with boys and butts.
Yes,
boys' butts.
Very clearly. The common thing is the boy that she has a crush on, I think for
Jimmy Jr.
Evidently, his pants would always disappear in her fantasies. So clearly, that was a thing.
She writes fan fiction about them. She's just a weird, awkward teenage girl.
Yeah.
And then, Gene is that big, loud, gross boy who just beats to his own drum, so to speak. And then Louise is the monster, the sinister one, who's always scheming and despite being the youngest, takes charge of the rest of them, and sort of orders them around and gets them involved in crazy stuff.
Yeah, they don't, even in this movie, it's kind of hilarious. They do not seem that difficult to sway or manipulate at all.
No. She manipulates them very easily every single time. And the thing is, Tina loves writing, right? And but guess what? She's never good at it. She loved girls. I don't think it's called Girl Scout. It's called something else in the show. Never good at it. Gene loves music.
Never.
He's terrible at it. Louise is just herself. She's just constantly getting in fights, specifically with the principal, who I love. That they only show him a little bit, but he's really funny.
That was the principal that would walk up to her and try to calm her down or whatever.
Yeah, okay, yeah. They have a rivalry.
That's hilarious.
And then, of course, Bob, he loves his burgers. And that's his dream, to make, burgers of the day. He never wanted to just make a regular burger shop. He wanted to add art to the burgers.
That's nice.
And the restaurant is always on the edge of just collapsing.
Literally, in this case, in this movie, it almost collapsed into the earth. I mean, that was honestly pretty funny, because the sinkhole that opened up in front of the restaurant, and the idea that it completely destroyed the entrance to the restaurant, and how it's basically dead for the rest of the film, is just, God, that poor guy, that poor man.
And yeah, 'cause the story is nice within the film, but it's mostly just an excuse to see them do things, and grow and as a family and work their way out of whatever mess they're in at this point. And yeah, I don't know. There's not too much to say for me. It's just I would just recommend watch it.
Yeah. I had a great time.
It's funny.
Honestly, I had a great time. I love all the gags that are on screen that they don't even call attention to. You just have to be looking out for them. and they're just so funny.
Yeah.
Like there's this one, and some of the set designs, I guess I should say, in this grand pier. There's this one where we go into a hidden location, and it's kind of like this bar area. And I was like, man, I wish that existed in real life so I could have that to myself. But one of the funny gags was that a secret opening happened to be like squeezing a statue's nipples. That was so funny.
And he was trying to like get their attention, like do the nipple. But you know what I think really like about the show is how unmean-spirited it is.
I love that too. I was expecting kind of the opposite, but no, when you see this, I kind of like, oh no, this is not at all what I thought it would be. I wouldn't mind seeing this every week.
Yeah, because I think a lot of adult animation, especially today, really
look at Family Guy.
into the. I mean, look at Rick and Morty.
Oh shit!
Yeah. Like to me, that is modern like adult animation.
Yeah,
that's sort of spearheading it. Everything is very mean-spirited or like nihilistic.
Yeah,
and this is like the least mean-spirited nihilistic show out there of adult animation, and I think that's why it has such a fan base.
Yeah,
I think people just fall in love with the family.
And people showed up to our screening, and they had a blast from what I could hear.
Yeah, you could tell there was definitely some longtime fans.
Yeah,
in the audience,
absolutely, and it's pretty cool because another thing, kind of to really build on what you were saying earlier, and that was how this show never really jumped the shark in terms of like staying true to what it always was. It never jumped the shark in terms of quality either from what you tell me, and that is something of an accomplishment when you're 12 seasons in. Because a lot of these other shows jumped the shark in terms of quality a lot sooner than that. I think for Family Guy, gosh, it must have been in their like 10th or 11th season where it was like, and I would say a lot of people would even say it was like season 7 or 8, where like they lost what made them like interesting in the first place. But for Bob's Burgers to have been on the air for 12 seasons and stayed on, it kind of has like that magic that It's Always Sunny has. Where they're like, 14, 15 seasons in, and they're still as, like, they still have that edge to them that they haven't lost this entire time.
That's another one I would love to see a movie for.
Why hasn't there been one, you think?
Because they're still going. They still got seasons. They got the podcast now that, like, became an overnight huge success.
Really? Yeah, I've seen clips from that podcast. Interesting, okay. But yeah. Were there any, I'm just curious, were there any like other movies that were movies of this sort where they're TV shows first and then they get a movie that you really like? Besides the SpongeBob SquarePants movie and the Simpsons movie?
Rugrats.
Did you ever see Wild Thornberrys?
I don't think I ever saw the movie.
Or the show? Or you saw the show?
No, I saw the show.
I love that movie. Yeah. That's
the brother.
Yes,
smashing.
It's
of course.
Those characters, I love them as well. And no, their movie was pretty great from what I remember. It's actually pretty touching and sweet. I think it, for the most part, served as a finale to their show. So,
or is it Paramount where they have all that shit?
Yeah,
I think I'd have to go back. And see that. I actually, God,
there are other movies that, let's say, there are versions, like I know Lilo and Stitch and Ed, Edd n Eddy had movies, but they were on TV. They weren't in theaters. So I guess those you can consider those as well. Which, by the way, wasn't made clear. Like Ed, Edd n Eddy and Lilo and Stitch were the series, I should say, were some of my favorite shows in animation growing up, and both of them also had TV. Both of their like TV installment. No, I'm sorry. Both of their movie installments were their finales.
How could I forget Invader Zim?
That's right. But that's.
I mean, again, technically it premiered on Netflix, but I mean, a lot of Netflix movies get nominated for Oscars, so c'est la vie.
The Kim Possible one was nice. So the drama, that was a big one. That was on Disney Channel. Though.
I don't think I saw those.
No.
Again, like you're hitting the areas where I started
dropping off,
not giving a shit.
But you liked Kim Possible, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. But it's just like now I'm watching that '70s show and Malcolm in the Middle.
That era, yeah.
And CSI. Like that's what I started watching. I will say, I actually think I like Rugrats in Paris more than
the original one.
The original Rugrats.
Yeah. There was also
like.
Go ahead on that one.
I was gonna say the emotional stuff with Chucky and like his mom and all. Like, oh my god, like it's devastating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And did you ever see Rugrats Go Wild?
Go Wild. Oh, the crossover.
Yes, with the Wild Thornberrys one. That was actually pretty fun.
Because if I didn't see the Wild Thornberrys movie, at that point I didn't.
No, actually, I stand corrected. I think Rugrats Go Wild might have been the last iteration for either of those shows, and it was their crossover.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I think
wasn't All Grown Up.
All Grown. Well, that's a sequel series, right? I mean, of the original Rugrats era, that was the last of it. Yeah, because All Grown Up did come after that. I guess also the Pokemon movies. That's right. I did list the first movie as one of the films. Remember a few years back, we had this show where we listed off the films that I guess shaped us, and that was one of them. There was I saw I think two of them in theaters. There was the first movie, and then there was the movie 2000. Very clever names for these movies, but they were a lot of fun. There is a novelty to it to see like a story that you've only seen on TV, but then go to the theater and experience it. And I think that's still there for those that do get that experience to go see in a theater. I never saw the live action Dragon Ball movie because I could tell that would always suck. And from what I've been told, it was like the less said about it, the better. Unfortunately, I did see The Last Airbender in theaters, which was an adaptation of one of the best shows ever made, Avatar: The Last Airbender. And
aren't they going to do an animated movie?
They are, I think. From what I recall reading, yes, but I'm not sure if that's a theatrical thing. I think it's more of a streaming thing, from what I recall.
Maybe.
There was... Oh my goodness. Oh yes. The thing is, there have been actually a lot of like smaller Dragon Ball, because there's a lot of Dragon Ball movies, in general. But
I feel there's a lot of like Dragon Ball ZX.
Yeah.
Ultra,
Dragon Ball Z and
Super
Superhero now. Like there's one that's coming out. I think I may actually go see that one if it comes out. Like, you know what? Fuck it, I'll go.
I mean, they have a poster on it, so
if I go, would you go with me? I went to go see Bob's Burgers.
I know literally nothing of Dragon
That
Ball
excuse
Z.
That doesn't fly. I knew nothing of Bob's Burgers, and I still went with you.
That's different. You know that Dragon Ball Z is gonna be all lore and shit, and it's like, which one's Goku? Like that's where I'm at.
Are you serious? Oh Jesus! No, I need to find
what makes him so special.
Like, I think it was the poster that we saw in theaters. It was actually the one that last time we were there, right?
Yeah.
I think it was, Superhero, the new one. August 19th, exclusively in movie theaters. I haven't even seen the other one, so I'm a little behind on the series, as it were. But, yeah.
And it's all the same series.
No. Well, yes and no. It's hard because...
Okay, is it all the same story?
It's all in one continuation.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Except there are 15 movies, I say, that are not canon, quote unquote. So
oh my
serious.
God. 15 movies not canon?
Yeah, seriously. And that's not even a joke. At least 10 to 15 that are like that have been released, but are not part of the actual continuation. They were made at the same time as the original anime was, and they were released in some moments as new episodes of the original anime. I think Z was airing, but those films had no relation to the actual storyline of the show, and so that always caused such confusion for me growing up. And then later on I realized, well, there was no connection to them ever, so that's why I never really watched the movies, because they would get in the way of like whatever storyline was in the actual show. But lately the new ones are canon. But those ones in that era was like
I don't know what to tell you why they were made, or I guess just to capitalize on success, because that was the thing at that time, was Z, and whatever they could make, they did. It's you have no idea, Peter, how enormous that universe is, both for the amount of content and then also the fan base.
I know the fan base is massive.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing with like what do you call it? Animes?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, "Oh yeah, there's 17 seasons with 32 episodes each season."
Yeah.
It's pretty rocky the first 5, but once you get into season 7, it all comes together.
Yeah.
And it's like, motherfucker, who gave you the time to just try out a fucking show for that long, just to muscle through to the 7th season? Like, I hear. Have you watched any of One Piece?
I did watch One Piece when I was like 10 or 12, when it was like when the dub was airing on Cartoon Network. But then the show just kept going, and then I just ultimately watched other stuff, and I just didn't keep up with it. And then here I am, I'm like 27 years old, and it's still airing new episodes. Amazing.
I heard they're at like 1,000 episodes. Like, not even an exact 1,000.
Shit.
What do you? Why?
I think between the original Dragon Ball series, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, and then you also include Dragon Ball GT, which that's a whole other thing, because that was a whole series that happened in between Z and Super that evidently isn't canon. It really isn't, but it was treated as such when it aired. So between that, there's at least 500 to 600 episodes.
There's nothing wrong with a good ending, folks.
And to be fair, that's the thing about this show that I think kind of defies the odds, because I think they've had several good endings. They've had several good end points, but they just keep going, and they somehow make it work. I don't know. I honestly don't know how they continue to do it, but I wish David was in our area, because then I go see it with him, because he would want to see this. So there's that. Maybe I can
go to him.
Maybe I can convince you to come.
Maybe I'll die.
Sure. All right. So that's the Bob's Burgers movie and all of that. Let's go ahead and get into the Wizarding World, right? The wonderful magical universe that was created by known transphobe J.K. Rowling, who very clearly has lost her touch and I think has gone off the deep end in terms of sanity, and then also maybe as a quality human being as well, which I can't really say that she is any longer, with like the demonizing and terrorizing that she has relished in, to be real with you, with a certain community in the world right now. It is disgusting to see her behavior. That is all we'll say on that. We will continue to insult her, but for, I guess, her purposes to what she contributes to this film, which is the screenplay. So this review is now on Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore. It is the third movie in this, what once was expected to be a 5-movie franchise, but it now very clearly is only 3, because this franchise very clearly has gone so off the rails that, and this last one really underperformed, especially here at the domestic side of things, to the point where it is hard to envision this series going on any longer. And, to be real with you, when you watch this film, this third movie, you can even tell on some level it knows that was a real possibility, that there wasn't much more to go on, so they kind of wrap things up with certain characters and certain arcs, quote unquote. So nevertheless, we are here to discuss the Fantastic Beasts film, which we didn't bother to see in theaters, because why would we? We caught on HBO Max, which if you have an interest in, and I guess if you are a fan of the Wizarding World movies, of this, universe, you might find a lot of wonder in it. And I guess you might just want to go ahead and like throw it on now that it's on streaming. You wouldn't have to pay much for it. So there's that. So Peter, go ahead and tell us.
I forgot you to look it up
on Letterboxd here.
What's it called? The Crimes of Dumbledore?
That's The Crimes of Grindelwald, which was the second movie, which I also... You know what? I'll say this. I did go back and see that movie, which I skipped in 2018. I saw it also on HBO Max. And it was... Wow. I mean, there was so much going on. And I don't think any of it meant anything. It certainly meant nothing to me. And I don't know if I'd call it garbage. I don't think...
You can do that.
I think the script, you can definitely call it garbage. Because there are so many plot threads, there are so many characters, and you care about none of it, and ultimately it's just rather incompetent in how it ultimately decided. I mean, it was flawed. Let's be real. I mean, we're going to say this again and again, and we have been saying it again and again, but it was flawed from the first moment, from the first film, to just not let this be a Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them franchise. They were so insistent on like shoehorning in this massive worldwide conflict with Dumbledore and Grindelwald into a franchise ultimately that was about just magical beasts. And so that was flawed from the beginning, and it has continued to plague every installment since. And here we are. So I saw Grindelwald, and it was rather lackluster in every way. There just wasn't anything. I mean, it kept my attention while I was watching it. I was just really intrigued with like how this kept going, and how you'd think that, you know, it treated a lot of what was in that film, Grindelwald, I mean, with such like importance, and then it ends, and then you're like, well, I guess it wasn't, because there wasn't much resolution to much of anything. Oh, and then it also ended with a cliffhanger. Well, maybe not a cliffhanger, but a revelation that Credence was a Dumbledore. Okay. All right.
Not that anyone cared.
Not that it mattered. I
mean, we talked about. Oh wait, I forgot.
Yes.
I gotta read what this is about. But I will say we talked about this because we do the Moreno's
Turn to
Harry Potter
Page
podcast. Turn to Page. That's what it's called.
You're on that show. I mean,
yeah. I literally. Oh my god. I think I went off because I was just like, Ezra Miller's character is the one thing that has ruined this franchise from the beginning, because the original Fantastic Beasts movie wasn't bad.
No,
when it was just
a Fantastic Beasts movie,
Eddie Redmayne, Fantastic Beasts movie. But then every once in a while we'd cut back to fucking
Credence
and all that shit, and it's like, why is this here? No one gives a shit. Like, this isn't important.
Yeah.
And then he becomes like this, the central character of the whole series. Who is he? What's his backstory? Everyone's after him. Da 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 da. And it's just so pointless and meaningless and does not matter. Does not matter. And oh my god, so stupid. Anyway, let's talk about it. Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of the Dumbledore. Directed by David Yates. Sorry, David Yates, you're going to have to find a new gig. Return to the magic. In an effort to thwart Grindelwald's plans of raising pureblood wizards to rule over all non-magical beings, Albus Dumbledore enlists his former student Newt Scamander, who agrees to help. Though he's unaware of the dangers that lie ahead, lines are drawn as love and loyalty are tested even among the truest friends and family in an increasingly divided wizarding world. Question: how old is Dumbledore supposed to be at this point?
You know, J.K. Rowling does not give a shit how old he's supposed to be.
I'm just curious.
No, because McGonagall was not supposed to be alive in that last movie, and yes, she's already teaching at Hogwarts. So the established canon was already broken. But as far as how old does he look?
No. I'm not asking how old he looks. I'm asking how old is he?
Well, I don't know.
Supposed?
I don't know. I mean, I could only my answer to you would only be based on how old Jude Law looks, and that would be what, mid-40s. Early 50s. That would be my best guess, because I'm not the person. Believe me. I mean, there's a reason I'm not on that podcast with you guys in the first place. I am not the person to be telling you how old he's supposed to be.
What year does the movie take place?
1920 something.
Let's say 29.
Yeah, let's say there. Yeah. I don't know how old he even is in the Harry Potter films. Yeah, that's not. I'm not the person to ask.
I guess if it's 19. He says he's born 1881.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's 1929, 48.
Yeah.
So that actually looks rather accurate.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I just know that he died at like 150 or some shit. So I was wondering of like, oh, what? Is he like 70 or something at this point? Looking ready to round like Jude Law. But no, that's actually looks rather accurate too.
We should also mention again, like this one of the unfortunate things that seems to continue to plague this franchise is the persistent presence of controversy. In addition to J.K. Rowling, outing herself as a transphobe this entire era, there also is the unfortunate circumstance that happened with Johnny Depp when he was basically fired off of this movie, because the last movie he was playing Grindelwald, and here he's replaced by Mads Mikkelsen. And yes, I recognize that there's been a whole trial and a verdict in the defamation suit, and Johnny Depp won and everything, but it's still a very complicated situation to parcel through. That being the case, it still remains controversial, and it has gotten to the point now where you could say there is a Johnny Depp horde, shall we say, of people that were not interested in this because he was fired, and people were upset that he was fired off of this movie and that Amber Heard was not fired off of Aquaman, or the new Aquaman movie that will be happening. There's one. Then there is the controversy, the current controversy with Ezra Miller, where throughout, he went on he was terrorizing the people of Hawaii earlier this year, getting in fights and bars, getting arrested countless times over there. And evidently he, as just this last week, was accused of grooming a then 12-year-old that he met, who's now 18. And they're both...
they have disappeared. And you know what's so goddamn funny? They have finished the Flash film.
What do you mean they finished?
Like, it's done.
Oh, God.
Like filming.
I know. But like this week, or it's been finished, you mean?
It's been finished. So they cannot go back. Like, they're fucked.
They can't even find Ezra Miller.
They can't even find him, right? But, like, let's say if this was, like, I don't know, like, he was attached to, or they're just a couple weeks into shooting, fire his ass, replace him, you can do it. The movie's done. Damn it. And it's like, who is going to promote the film? This motherfucker's in his hiding hole in Hawaii somewhere. Like, who knows? We're
not kidding. Like, they're looking for him right now. The cops are. They need to serve them papers, because evidently, he ran off with this 18-year-old that the parents have accused him of grooming and also physically assaulting.
Yeah, that's not a great combo.
No, so the
fastest man alive. You'll never catch it.
Man, that is too funny. Anyway, so those are, unfortunately for the Fantastic Beasts films, J.K. Rowling, Ezra Miller, and Johnny Depp's troubles have also been front and center with these movies being released. So that didn't do them any favors whatsoever. We just wanted to address that at the top. So, back to this movie. The short story is J.K. Rowling, at one point in time, was known for being a great writer because she was a great novelist. And I think it should be plainly obvious to most people that have common sense, but clearly it wasn't obvious to executives involved with this franchise. Or maybe it was, and they didn't have much of a choice because they have... Every person who J.K. Rowling has worked with, post the Harry Potter movies hitting it big, has just allowed her to do whatever she wants, and I guess there's some kind of a legal component there. Otherwise, she would not sign off on them making movies or theme park rides. We all know what happened with Disney and Universal. So she's a very controlling person, has increasingly grown to be more controlling than she ever was in the first place. But I don't think it's that crazy to say that a novelist does not necessarily make a great screenplay writer. Just because you know how to write good books does not mean you are well equipped to write good movies. And she has been not the sole, I don't think so. Maybe she was the sole writer in the first film, but I think for most of these movies she has been, accompanied by co-screenwriters. That being said, we know how controlling she is. We know she gets her way, and look, these movies are a shining example. Just because you know how to write a book does not mean you can write a good movie. And holy shit does it show. And if we're being real, these films have a lot of problems. But all of those problems can be traced back to J.K. Rowling just doing a terrible job in the writing department. The writing is ultimately what sinks these films. So that's the first thing you can say about this movie. And the troubles that it has. Peter?
That's the first, second, and last thing you can say with these movies. Because, I mean, there are aspects of the film where... sorry, I'm boring myself. There are aspects of the film where I think things could be working, right? Jude Law as Dumbledore works. I think...
Mads
Mikkelsen as Grindelwald. Best Grindelwald
easily
by far.
Yeah, we've had 3 actors already play that character.
Mm-hmm. This is the one. I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, but Johnny Depp, Mads Mikkelsen should have been Grindelwald from the beginning."
Yeah,
he was genuinely really good in the role, especially all 2 times he interacted with Dumbledore.
Mm-hmm.
So. And, visually, as a film, it's not bad looking. It's not badly directed. There are moments of cleverness in, some of the, magic stuff of it. The biggest issue for me really does come down to the story and the writing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's really what that's the biggest issue. Like, every time I think of why did this film fail? Why did this whole series fail? It's because
it's not on the actors, that's for sure. They're doing a great job. As good a job as they can do. Yeah.
It's not the directing.
No.
There's nothing. No. I can't think of a particular thing where I'm like, terrible direction. Like, this is ugly. Or this is
Although, David Yates, I think, needs to find something else. I think this franchise needs somebody else to come in.
They need fresh blood. Because, I will say, again, not ugly, but it is this thing of I'm tired of just... The wands have basically kind of turned into guns.
Yes, exactly.
And they've stopped doing interesting stuff with the magic, which is unfortunate. I mean, there's little moments here and there where it's like, oh, that's kind of neat, but they flash by so quick. And I think, it's more and more the magic is kind of stripped from it. Like, before they used to wear robes and hats and look like witches and wizards, and now they just look like regular, everyday human beings during that era. And, wands used to be this magical thing that, I don't know, there was more to it than just point and
shoot.
And it just feels like that's what it is now. But as far as overall direction, not terrible.
No.
Right?
No.
But it's just creatively, when it comes to the set pieces, we need someone.
It's very stale.
It's getting stale, for sure. But again, the biggest issue is the story's terrible.
Yeah.
There's too much characters. There's too much connection to stuff that does not matter unless your entire life is spent on Pottermore.com or whatever that the fucking Potter website is, and just knee deep in Potter lore 24/7. then a lot of the stuff may matter to you, but it sure as hell doesn't matter to me. Like including the Lestrange family, I don't care.
No,
I don't.
Makes no sense either.
It's so much time. Like all of Crimes of Grindelwald was like, it's the same thing. The Lestrange girl, it's like there's this mystery of like, what did she do? She came over on a boat and she had a brother and this, and it's like, this is actually what happened. No, actually, this is what happened. No, actually, none of that matters. He's a Dumbledore, and it's like, shut the fuck up. Like, no one cares. Develop a character. So much of that. It's and just throwing in characters. It feels like just to create characters. Like, they simultaneously. This is so weird to me. They gave Newt a brother, and they gave him an assistant.
Yeah.
Why? Why? Like, for the first movie, he didn't have an assistant. Why'd you throw in both? Like, if you need someone there to bounce off Newt, as he separate. Well, first of all, if you need someone there to bounce off Newt, why not have his human best buddy there with him on the adventure?
Right.
Because their chemistry is fun together.
Yeah,
it's
Jacob
great.
Kowalski.
They're best buds, and that works.
I think Kowalski may be the best thing about this whole franchise.
Easily.
Because anytime he's on screen, you like the guy, and you like what he's doing.
He just exudes that, like, average Joe.
The charisma.
Charisma and energy. Like, listen here, buddy. I don't know anything about this magic stuff.
He's the only American here. Too.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm here to find my lady. You know, and
yeah.
like... And he's genuinely funny. I really like that actor. He's in a lot of different stuff. But if you had just narrowed down the story to oddball, what's his name? Newt.
Yeah.
And his spunky American Muggle friend on escapades to find magical creatures. That's it. You're good. We're done. Throw him a love interest, and then throw the American a love interest. And they did that, and it worked, and it was good. They were roommates. Their love interest, like all of that. That's all you need. But no, we need the magical war, and it's not even a war. It's
That's the thing too. This is not even the war yet. The war hasn't even begun. Like, they keep talking about a war happening for 3 films. It's not even started. It's just talk to the war.
Mm-hmm. We never get to it. And again, it can't just be like a bad guy returns and now he's doing bad guy things. Like, think about Voldemort, right? He returned in the 4th one, I believe.
Goblet of Fire.
And okay, he didn't do any weird shit. The next one, the 5th one,
Order of the Phoenix.
Order of the Phoenix. What was he doing? He was just trying to. His goal was to get a prophecy. Like, that was it. And then he was like manipulating Harry and his friends to get to Harry, to get the prophecy, to learn his fate because he feared Harry, right? And like, I don't know, he's just doing standard bad guy things. Whereas with Grindelwald, it's like, first of all, I need to manipulate the government system in order to get myself pardoned of all crimes. Next, I will enter the wizarding election, of which I will give my speeches and you prepare my message. But also, there is a legendary magical fawn that if it kneels to you, it knows you're a good person and people will want to vote for me. So I will steal said magical fawn after I'm pardoned and all this, and then manipulate it to kneel in front of me and then get elected. To me, it's kind of like if like you say like I want to rob a house, right? So then you're like, first off, what I got to do is I got to go to college, right? I got to get my degree. I need to get an entry level job at a security system. Work my way up for about 10 years. Become manager. Send in one of my guys into the house.
Oh my
God. For inspection. You know, and it, like that's literally what it feels like watching this movie. It is like, why? So much unnecessary fat. And guess what? It all comes back to one person.
Newt?
Which is, no, J.K. Rowling.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. J.K. Rowling. She's not good here. No, I mean, I'm just so confused by all of it, to be quite frank with you. I don't understand why it is that Grindelwald needs the office to declare war. He seems to already have garnered an international movement. What? Like, I don't...
And the thing is, I'm not saying you can't do the whole, like, skeezy election type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you should start there.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're following all three movies, it's like, okay, first movie, he's already a known criminal, and he had snuck his way into the Ministry of Magic, posing as another person. He gets arrested for the many people he has killed, escapes, and then the next part is then to try and run for office. Start him off as like, I don't know, like a mob guy, you know? He's like, I'm running for office. Oh, you know what's a good example? What's it called? I think Gangs of New York.
Oh, the Martin Scorsese movie?
Yeah. Remember they had like a whole election type thing?
Mm-hmm.
That made sense.
Yeah. Well, it made sense there. It doesn't make any sense here. I mean, just none of this makes any sense, and I don't think there don't seem that J.K. Rowling doesn't understand how dumb it makes not just herself look, but these characters look like, to the fact that they let a deer basically pick the next president of the ministry.
Like, listen, a magical hat that picks the houses for the kids, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, it means nothing, right? They get the same education. It's basically just like the kids you're housing with. So it's like a magical hat, senses who you are, places you in a house. Okay, fun, whimsical, I can get that. If literally the leader of the entire government is chosen because an animal kind of likes you, like... Come on, like
get the fuck out of here. I mean,
like, why should I take any of this whole system seriously, right? Because now when it's like someone wants to tear down the magical system, it's like, yeah, they probably should. Like, this whole thing is bullshit. Insanely bullshit.
And then even when it is revealed that Grindelwald lied to them, why would his supporters give a shit if he lied? They still want the violence. They still want the genocide, of the Muggles. They still want the war. Why would they all of a sudden back down just because he lied? Who gives a shit if he lied? Look at the Trump supporters right now. They know an insurrection happened. They know he called the insurrection. And they're like, what insurrection? It was Antifa. Like,
I think that's why it feels so hollow, right? Because if I'm supposed to believe that Grindelwald's message is getting through to the masses, to the people, none of them would care if he cheated, right? It would literally mean nothing. And here it's like, whoa, I was ready to genocide the entire human race. But then I found out that you won this democratic process unethically. I'm going to have to step aside. I can't let this go through. Fascists don't care about democracy. They do not care if their leader cheats. I think that's
in
the
fact,
thing that
they would
rang the most hollow.
We live in a timeline where the former president of this United States contemplated declaring martial law to remain in power.
Yeah. And none of his supporters care. Not one. Because it's like, if you're trying to say something about fascism and like tie it to modern day and stuff like that, because that's the only thing that could make me think why you would want to include this whole election plot line. Mm-hmm. You did a piss poor job of it. Like, yeah, that's not the way it would go down. They wouldn't care if you cheated. No one would care. Like at the end, I almost laughed out loud. Like the fawn, they realize it's the wrong fawn, and then one of the guys is like, well, obviously we need to do a redo because people didn't know that it was the right fawn. We're gonna vote again. Like, we need to do a redo. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, you're not picking like what pizza place to go to. Like, this is an election for the leader of your whole world, your whole system. Like, imagine if our electoral, like, we vote, right, for president, and it's like, he actually did end up having sexual relations with that woman. We need to do it. We need to do this again, guys. Like, let's vote again. Like, no, like, you can't do that.
I know it's not even worth like asking questions because it's all just so dumb. But I'm really confused here. Was this position that Grindelwald was going for the president of the magic ministry for all over the world, or just for Germany?
I honestly don't know. I didn't know that they had a world government leader. I thought they just had like
I don't know anything.
Respective leaders of like their country. I didn't know they had like a minister to the ministers of magic. Like, I don't know. Like, I thought it was supposed to closely resemble like the human world, right? So, because they're in England, you know, they have a minister of magic, and that's like that's their, what do they call it over there across the pond?
Parliament?
They don't call it a president.
They're
they
prime minister.
Like prime minister, yeah. Like, so to me, I'm like, okay, that's like their prime minister. And then I assumed like there's a magical equivalent in America that's like a president, right? Maybe they're not even called whatever, the minister, right? They're called some other word. You know, similarly, because it's different systems, you know, whatever. Closely, maybe it is the magical president. Like, that's literally just what they say. But no, everyone is just called the minister. There's an American minister of magic. There's I guess, African minister of magic. Like, I guess, right? And then there's the ultra minister of everyone.
Ultimately, it means nothing, right? Because, I mean, what a waste. And then, of course, part of the plot of this film is Dumbledore has to be, because Grindelwald can see the future, he has to be so unpredictable, and so he has to confuse everybody on purpose.
Why add that? Why is that story element necessary? Like, think about it. The whole point of the fucking magical fawn was to use it to manipulate everyone to voting for you. But then they also added the extra wrinkle of like, well, if you slit its throat and look at its blood, I guess you can see the future now. Why? It's just an excuse to make things confusing when the series is already confusing.
Yeah. And then and then it just ends, and then I guess it realized it wasn't going to get another movie because everything. I mean, Kowalski and Queenie's thing gets closed off. They get married, and that's that. I mean, I guess like
good for them.
Yeah, I mean, good for them, right?
since it's Pride Month, this film did have it's two of its main characters were in a relationship with each other. I wanted to ask you, how do you think that was handled throughout these movies? Because I know some people were like celebrating how open this last one treated its relationship with. And I don't know, to be honest with you, if there's anything worth celebrating anything like here. I mean, again, the story is that these two wizards not only were best friends, but they were boyfriends. Let's be real about that. And I guess in this movie, it's rather out in the open, but there seems to be there's no story there about that. I mean, the whole movie, I'm just like, man, I'm really curious in this romance that Grindelwald and Dumbledore had. It's a shame I can't see that.
You want to know who's the top?
Yes, clearly. And I think everybody else does as well. But we can't...
Clearly Grindelwald is. But I'll just say that. Clearly.
Anyway, you were saying, I was asking you about the way it handled the relationship and the whole, how they handled the queerness stuff of it.
I'm gonna say that I think it was handled well enough. Like, no, that's not to say that like, oh, they were so brave. It's so amazing. This queer
how revolutionary.
I'm not saying that. Yeah, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying for the story that they were telling, it was there as much as it needed to be, I guess. Like, because they didn't shy away from it. Like he said, like, I loved you.
Yeah, right? Several times. Of course, it was cut out in some like homophobic countries. Is there an equivalent, though, to a blockbuster of this scale to where an LGBTQ love story is so front and center?
With a blockbuster? Man, I don't know.
Would you be of the mind that because it was central, again, a film that is so deeply flawed as it is, that in and of itself is progress?
Oh, yeah. I mean, anything is progress, right?
Yeah, because it was something that no one in the film made much ado about that relationship. And again, this is 1920s, which it sounds unrealistic, right? That would be.
I would almost argue that they maybe should have made much ado about it.
No, I'm with you. I mean, I'm saying on one level, I guess the thinking behind the film was, oh, it's more progress if we make it seem like it's no big deal. Sure. My other side of the brain thinks that, well, it's 1920s. People would feel strongly about that one way or the other, clearly. And they would feel it strongly with one way. But maybe it would have been far more tangible, and you would have felt it if people did talk about that. It was made an issue.
And they wouldn't even have to be homophobic, right? But it would just be like, whoa, like this is a big deal, right? Like, because obviously they would.
But no one cares in this movie. No one cares.
No, I think Dumbledore's brother would be a little homophobic. Let's be.
I think it was implied. There was a line of dialogue that it was.
Oh, was there really?
There was one where I'd say that his brother didn't approve of his relationship with Grindelwald when they were younger.
Oh yeah, but it came off more of like because Grindelwald's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
More so than like it being a gay thing. I'm saying I think he would straight up be like homophobic. Because I'll be honest, that adds to the weirdness with the film, where like some things are super progressive and just like accepted, and then other things are like crazy backwards, and it just makes the whole. Because before, again, it in the Harry Potter films, it made more sense when it felt like, okay, this universe is obviously, this magical universe is obviously growing up right beside humans, right? So they're sort of advancing in the same way, right? Because they go to school, they have history, you can graduate, you can get a job, they have governments similar to what is currently there in the human side. So there are parallels of it, and of course there are differences, but it's like basically we're developing along the same tracks. But then these movies are kind of like, they're like super progressive in one way, and then in another way because I think in America the American magic people, it's like you're not allowed to have a relationship with a non-magical.
Everywhere.
Oh, everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. That was a big thing in the second movie where like Kowalski and Queenie could not be married because one's a muggle and one's a magic person.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, isn't it?
That's really, really weird.
It seems rather,
it's like,
yeah,
we're cool with gay people, but like not non-magical people. I don't know. And then also not, again, no racism, right? But it's like, I don't know how you can have a magical world that's basically not racist towards skin color.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally, right on top of a human world that is barreling towards World War III.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, and technically these wizarding people are supposed to like live in and around and next to muggles. So it's like, how do you... It just doesn't make sense, I don't think. I don't know how you mesh that.
Yeah, but then I guess the argument is maybe we've thought too deeply about a film that clearly isn't all that deep.
Well, then don't make a movie about nothing but lore then. Because then guess what? I'm going to talk about the fucking lore.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also rather unfortunate because I don't see how this issue resolves itself if J.K. Rowling is still involved in the writing. You got to get her away from the pen.
Yeah. You need to have like a George Lucas level sell-off of, what's funny? And you know what? I think the same thing would happen. If she sold it to WB, they would immediately announce a legacy film.
Yeah.
Honestly though, I'd be for it. As long as it had nothing to do with that fucking cursed child bullshit.
I think what they would do is that they'd use the cursed child as something to keep in mind, maybe emulate, but do a completely different story of it. Because I hear it's not that well received.
No.
So,
anyway, let's move from a terrible finale to a franchise to a terrible finale for a franchise. You know what would be a great triple feature? It would be this film, Jurassic Park Dominion, and The Rise of Skywalker. That would be a fantastic triple feature.
Okay, I am sorry. For the silence, I just had to pull my hair out. God. All right, so yes, this next one is yeah. Go ahead, read the damn thing, Peter.
Jurassic World Dominion, the epic conclusion of the Jurassic era. 4 years after Isla Nublar was destroyed, dinosaurs now live and hunt alongside humans all over the world. None of this will matter. This fragile balance will reshape the future and determine once and for all whether human beings are to remain the apex predators on a planet they now share with history's most fearsome creatures. This is not what the movie is about.
Which is one of the many problems that we have here. One of the many and never-ending problems that we have here. No, it's a lie. That's a bold-faced lie. The marketing lied to you people. This is not what the movie's about.
Directed by a shit director.
And a shit writer. Peter, real quick. Yeah. There were 2 islands. There was Isla Nublar and there was Isla Sorna. In The Lost World and in Jurassic Park 3. Isla Sorna is the main island that we're on. But in the last movie...
No, Isla Nublar.
I thought it was Isla Sorna.
Wait, which movie?
Which is the original island? It's
Isla Nublar.
Yeah, that's the one that we see in Jurassic World where they have the actual Jurassic World theme park, right?
Yes.
But Isla Sorna was the one from Jurassic Park 2 and 3. When they were on, that's called as Site B, where they had the other dinosaurs there. Mm-hmm. So there were 2 islands. Okay, so Isla Nublar, you just reminded me in that description, gets destroyed in Fallen Kingdom. And there was this whole hullabaloo about what happens to the dinosaurs, which is one of the idiotic things about that film. Let's be real about that. Why? What happened to Isla Sorna?
I may be wrong, but I think it was said in Jurassic World that they moved the dinosaurs from Isla Sorna over to
Isla Nublar, that is correct.
Isla Nublar for Jurassic World.
That's true. But that begs the question, what happened to the island?
It's probably still there, I guess.
Okay, so what I'm getting at is, couldn't that whole thing that was happening at the beginning of Fallen Kingdom be solved by just picking out the dinosaurs and putting them back on Sorna as Nublar was about to go extinct?
Yes. But corporations, we must utilize them in warfare.
We should be clear, again, as we have with franchise films. We want to do a deep dive into our history with them and how we felt about them. The original movie is a treasure. It is, I feel, one of the best movies of all time. It has, I think, it will forever capture the imagination of so many people. And I just, honestly, I think the world of it, I think it's just absolute perfection. And nothing that has come since has come close to it. But part of me is okay with it as long as I get an entertaining experience. And for the most part, this franchise has given me nothing but that, except lately. I don't necessarily love Lost World, Jurassic Park 3, or even Jurassic World, but those films ultimately gave me what I wanted, and that was dinosaurs eating people interestingly, and for the most part, well-made enough movies.
Mm-hmm.
And well, yes.
Like, I just want to say it real quick. For obviously, The Lost World was directed by Steven Spielberg. It was one of his few sequels, but Jurassic Park 3 was directed by Joe Johnston.
Mm-hmm. Director of The Rocketeer and Captain America: The First Avenger.
And the original Jumanji. And
I believe one of the original people who created the character Boba Fett.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, not obviously a good Hollywood director.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the Jurassic Park 2 and Jurassic Park 3, definitely not Jurassic Park 1, but they were well made.
Yeah, and you and I have always defended those movies. I know, like, a lot of the people in the era that those films came out, especially in the 2000s, really crapped on them as like awful garbage movies. They're not great, but I think they do what they need to do, at least from what I remember of a Jurassic Park film. And honestly, if we're going to compare these to what came after, wow.
Yeah.
You couldn't think of any more different. Like, these films 2 and 3 are masterpieces compared to particularly 5 and 6, for being real. And even World, there was a novelty to it, and it was ultimately a crowd-pleasing experience. And it had the good fortune of not allowing the idiot known as Colin Trevorrow, because he did direct it, he did write it, but his idiocy did not sink that film as it clearly has sunk the last two.
Yeah, no, the biggest problem, I know I brought up The Rise of Skywalker. It reminds me a lot of the new Star Wars trilogy, in that the first film, kind of a hack director that has succeeded in ways they probably shouldn't have. Made a carbon copy of the original.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you got that in common with the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one, I would say a better director takes over.
Mm-hmm. In this case with J.A. Bayona.
Mm-hmm. The issue is the script was written by Trevorrow.
Yeah.
This is what happened when you quote unquote plan it from the beginning. So that really fucked up that film. And then now you have the last one where the prodigal son returns to direct the final one. And it is by far the worst. It is a as the kids say, smorgasbord of bullshit.
By the way, both of those films I think have the rare distinction of not just being the worst of their new trilogies, but the worst of the entire franchise.
Yes, 100%. And their build is like this epic conclusion, nostalgia fest, massive closer, and then they're just filled with the most baffling story choices you could ever imagine. Yeah. And you were simultaneously impressed with the zero risks taken and the stupidest decisions made possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't know how we feel about this film, maybe you do now.
Jesus, I gotta tell you, I don't even know if I want to say anything at this point. I just kind of want to hear more of you. But I didn't have a terrible time watching this, and the only reason why I didn't have a terrible time was because I was having a good time up until the end. But I was having a good time laughing at it. At a point, it does become a so bad it's good, but then it keeps going. And then it becomes it's bad, it's boring.
It's bad and boring and bad.
Yeah. So for a while, it gets in the sweet spot where it's so bad it's good, but then it loses you, and then it just like continues to shit the bed repeatedly. But honestly, I'm impressed by Colin Trevorrow. I'm genuinely impressed. I did not think a director-writer can be this incompetent.
Right?
This film, I think, fails at everything it tries to do, and it makes the literal worst decision from top to bottom. With every character, with every this whole movie is a mistake. Everything in this movie is just the worst decision that could have possibly been made, and in that aspect, it does share a resemblance to Rise of Skywalker. But the takeaways is garbage. This. Colin Trevorrow, and again, we don't do mean-spiritedness here and attack people personally, only when it's, I think, warranted. The man's an idiot. He can't write, he can't direct, he's a talentless hack. And it shows, ultimately, that Episode 9, the Star Wars Episode 9, was fucked one way or the other.
Yeah.
No matter, even if his script was better than what anything Rise of Skywalker was, he still would be directing it. So there, goes out the window.
And it's not like he's like directing-wise, there's anything really interesting there. It's actually funny. I think Patrick Williams had tweeted something along the lines of Colin Trevorrow's best film is still his unmade Star Wars 9 script, which unfortunately might be true.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
It probably is true. I think the most interesting thing about this film is its unbelievably stupid story decision, right? Because Colin Trevorrow.
I don't want to cut you off there, but this unbelievably stupid story decision is so unbelievably stupid. I want to make sure people that listen understand. That it's unbelievably stupid. Like, there are things that we're going to have to get over it and, like, pick apart and criticize. But this decision not only ruined the story, well, the story decision ruined the movie, but it is so dumb. You really have to call into question the intelligence of everybody involved. That's not hyperbole. This was such a gimme. Like, this movie was like, it writes itself. And you look at that marketing, it's like, they got it. That's the movie that we can see, and that's actually going to be fun. And they fucking lied. This isn't that movie at all. Instead, their bright idea was to have a film that is known for being littered with dinosaurs and them eating people, and then make the film decidedly not that at all.
Well, what's crazy about this is, first of all, the film is called Jurassic World, right?
Yeah.
Let's start there. And then the sequel, I have maintained since I watched that one in movie theaters that the script by Colin Trevorrow, that whole sequel exists solely so you can get to the end where all the dinosaurs are released and they're roaming the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think he so badly wanted to make that quote-unquote literal Jurassic World film where it's a world filled with dinosaurs and human beings in the modern day, that the whole second film was just an excuse. It's just like, how can we bend story decisions to get us there?
Right.
So then the second one, you see the trailers, right? And everything is about dinosaurs are all over. You know, we're on the brink of extinction. Da 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 da.
This new one,
we
you
gotta
mean?
get the band back. Yeah, this new one, Dominion. We gotta get the band back together. You know, dun 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 dun, dun. And it's like, okay, fuck it, let's have fun. Let's see what this is. I just read you the description, right? Like, that's the movie I described, right? That is not what this movie is. In fact, the only real... the movie starts with, like, dinosaurs have been integrated into the human world. And then the movie ends with a newsreel talking about how dinosaurs have been integrated into the human world. And that's it. The actual threat, the actual main thrust of the story is that genetically altered locusts have started... yeah. Genetically altered locusts have started eating the world's crops. So now we're on a globe-trotting adventure to figure out who released them, which actually we don't have to really find out because we know the second. They literally are just like biosyn. Those raggedy rascals. And then it's just like trying to infiltrate biosyn to get evidence to show the world that yes, they are destroying the crops with their genetically altered locusts. And that's the movie. And honestly, dinosaurs are just kind of background. They're constantly there, but they're like an obstacle. They're like when I have to hop over a crack in the floor. Like that level of obstacle.
Remind me the title of this movie again?
Jurassic World Dominion.
And they're window dressing. They're just there in the background.
Mm-hmm.
They're not even the main problem in this movie.
Yeah. And can I tell you how insane? Like, this is the most baffling story decision I think I've ever seen in a major blockbuster.
Ever.
Because literally, the entire Jurassic series is about saying if humans and dinosaurs were to mix, it would be catastrophic. The entire point of this dinosaurs getting loose in the park and then it being violent chaos is the movie screaming at us that humans and dinosaurs would not be able to coexist in the modern world.
It would end badly for us.
It would end badly for us. Up until this point, we had seen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 films screaming this. And then we finally get to the point where it's like, oh my god, it's happening. Dinosaurs or humans are going to have... It's going to be a clusterfuck of epic proportions. As, you know, entire ecosystems are thrown for a loop, right? As these dinosaurs are just unleashed onto the modern world. And what happens is a big emphatic shrug. Like, dinosaurs got into the trash cans again. Like, unironically, it becomes a modern adaptation of the fucking Flintstones. It's the Flintstones. It's literally
the
like...
Flintstones.
Yes, the Flintstones. Your modern family. That's what it is. Where it's like, oh, honey, the dinosaurs got in the trash again. Gotta call the city.
Oh my
like
god!
There's a scene where like construction workers, Like literally the fucking Flintstones, like a Brachiosaurus is just like in the way of construction. And they're just like, I'll tell you, boss, what are we supposed to do? And it's like, oh, let's lure it away, then get back to work. Okay, boss. Like it's that level of like nuisance.
Yeah. It's more of an inconvenience, if anything.
Like a slight inconvenience.
It's honestly, it's somehow, I'm not sure if this was part of the intention, but it unironically becomes an interesting allegory for how many people have treated coronavirus. Which is well, not everyone, but a lot of people have just like treated it like no big deal, and they just moved on with their lives.
But that's not true, though.
Yeah, because
because it actually is no big deal in this movie. Nothing. Like at the end of the movie, I don't know if they're like gonna go testify in front of Congress or something, and they're like in the front, the Washington Monument.
Yeah.
And there's just like a little girl playing with a little fucking those little dinosaurs.
The pterodactyls?
No, like the little tiny ones that are like me,
yeah,
and like run around and have actively ate people in the past 2 movies.
Yeah.
But now she's like feeding it like it's a duck.
Yeah.
And it's just viewed as like, like I think Alan Grant is just like, oof, I'm never gonna get used to that. But like it's nothing. The entire point of these movies is the dangers of genetic power and how if they are unleashed on the world, it could be catastrophic. And then finally, after 5 movies, it is unleashed on the world and it means nothing. And they're like, oh, I guess that dinosaur thing kind of worked itself out. Anyway, look at these locusts. Why should I give a fuck about the locusts? It seems genetic power is no big deal. It seems it's working itself out. I don't know what to tell you. That's fine. We'll just make genetic grain that'll resist the massive genetic grasshoppers, whatever the fuck. This is beyond baffling. Beyond baffling.
I'm speechless.
It's like if Return of the Jedi ended and it's like, yeah, I guess the Empire isn't that bad. Like we thought if they took over, like it would be kind of bad, but like we're coexisting. It's cool. Like,
I mean, I don't know what happened because you're right. The last one very clearly was setting up what this movie should have been, and it's not that. And I mean, the idea that people out there thought it would make a good movie to just like, and I guess the main message of this film, because it also ends weirdly with this like somebody looking at the camera and like, well, I guess we just have to find a way to live together. That's the main message of this movie. And it's just like, again, as you say, it's just completely not in the same franchise as the films that led up to it. But aside from that, you're talking about human beings just being okay with like living in a world where at any moment for doing normal mundane activities, they can be eaten alive by pterodactyls or velociraptors or T-Rexes. Or I guess you never want to go in the ocean again because there's this big fucking dinosaur that'll just eat you whole. Okay, I guess the message is, well, that's nature, and we had no dominion over it, and I guess that's that. And I'm like, no, like that wouldn't happen realistically. What would happen is the extinction of our species. We couldn't survive the impact of that. Like world governments would be in pieces. Everything would be on the brink of absolute oblivion.
It's like, it would be like, oh, what happened to little Cindy? Oh, she was playing outside and a pterodactyl carried her off and ate her.
Anyway, what's on TV tonight?
Yeah. No. No. Like, okay. Since we're talking about it, I gotta do this.
Yeah.
Because it's inside of me and I gotta let it out. The story for this movie literally wrote itself.
Yeah.
Like I was so certain, not only, and because usually it's like sometimes I feel differently than a lot of other people. That's normal. We all have different opinions. But the story for this movie was so beyond obvious.
Yeah.
Not only did I assume what the story was, the entire world assumed what the story was. And this is what the story should have been. All of the dinosaurs have, through one means or another, either smuggling or they just went there on their own, has spread across the world.
Yeah.
Right? And now world governments are on the brink. Entire ecosystems are being wiped out.
Yeah.
Right? Because I saw that it's this weird thing in the movie where it's like, they talk about like their reserve they have in Dominion.
Mm-hmm.
In
Italy.
The Biosyn Reserve.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And they're like, oh yeah, like,
it's basically another park.
Mm-hmm. But it's like, oh, they feast on the deer there and stuff like that. And I'm like, throwing dinosaurs in here would destroy the deer population, right?
Yeah.
Like, it would destroy the ecosystem. Like, you can't just throw massive thousands of pounds creatures and like dozens, maybe even hundreds of them, just throw them in here and just expect the wildlife to not change because of it, right? So like I think it would be it wouldn't be great obviously, but it would be the most obvious story choice, and it would be cool as a film of like, hey, the deer population is being ravaged because of the loose raptors. Everyone's afraid to go out of their home. The military is stretched thin as they're trying to set up safe zones and like safe avenues to be able to drive to and from city to city, as they're trying to capture and detain as much of the dinosaurs as they can. But they're repopulating, or not they're repopulating, but they're reproducing, and the numbers are just keep growing, and it's a devastating thing, and it's not easy to get a hold of this. And ultimately what the story should have been is, and this is me playing a producer, writer, whatever Hollywood persona. The government hires Chris Pratt to try and in a cross-country mission to deliver BD Wong to wherever he has to go, because he has the capabilities, he has the codes to hit the kill switch for the dinosaurs in their DNA, which will cause them to all start to die off. But he's in one side of the country, and airplanes, it's too risky to do it in an airplane because pterodactyls are owning the skies right now. They got to do it on foot. It's so he's hired to transfer him, and then what's her name, Claire, the girl, yeah. She tagged along, I guess. And now they're on a cross-country mission to get him to where he needs to hit in the codes to end this Armageddon for mankind. That's it. Like, that's the movie. Because not only that, you get awesome locations, right? Because you get to go through deserts, you get to go through wooded areas, through cities, through all of it, right? And you get to see the way different dinosaurs have set up their new lives in different areas of the country, right? Because in previous Jurassic films, we've only ever seen like the jungle, right? We've seen the islands, and like that's it. But me and you, we live in a desert. There are desert dinosaurs, right? Mm-hmm. They go through desert towns and see the dinosaurs, what they set up. They go through big cities. Maybe T-Rexes are freaking ravaging through them, and the military's having a hard time dealing with that. I love the San Diego sequence in the second one.
Oh yeah,
Lost World. Yeah, stuff like that. And yeah, it's a race against time to save the world. That's the movie. It's so obvious. But no, we got to talk about locusts in our dinosaur movie. I'm sorry. I just was.
No, keep going. No, I'm not. I'm just listening because it's just the more we talk about it, the worse it gets.
I mean, we can talk about the most interesting aspects of the film to me. In which case, it's not a Jurassic movie.
No, I mean, I think the last act.
The last act feels like a direct remake of the first movie, the first Jurassic Park movie, in a lot of ways. Again, just like Rise of Skywalker.
Yep.
The first one was a direct remake, and then this one, the last third, is another direct remake.
Mm-hmm. But there were also some other comparisons to other films that were kind of hilarious, and when you pointed it out, it became too hard to not see it. To where it's like, yes, in essence, this is not a Jurassic movie for many reasons. And it almost feels as if, like, Colin Trevorrow, I'm not sure he did this on purpose, but when you see this film, you get the impression that he tried to make as many different kinds of films he's always wanted to make in one movie.
Yes. You know what it feels like? It feels like that, getting kicked off Star Wars really got to him. Because he really brought it to this film. Because that whole middle section of the film feels like a weird cross between, like, a spy film, Indiana Jones, and, like, Star Wars.
I'd throw in Looney Tunes in there, too, because that's how dumb it got.
It got so dumb. Well, they literally have, like, a cantina scene.
That's the
but it's that, like, they enter, you never find a larger hive of scum and villainy. And it's like they got the music playing, and they have all these Muppet creatures everywhere, like...
The camera pans to see the entire, like, venue, and it's very much like that, yeah.
Uh-huh. But then you have, like... Within that area, like, Indiana Jones-esque fight scenes.
That's right.
Where they're, like, fighting back and forth. But then everything with, like, the raptors and the chase throughout the city. And, like, they literally have, like, a Bond villain for a little while of the movie. That one lady.
It was, I think her name is Dietmar Lockman. She played Daisy Johnson's mother on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, no, I've seen her in a lot of stuff. She's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she was good here. Her. She fits the role really well, but why is she here? Why is this happening?
Why is there a Bond villain in the middle of this Jurassic film?
There's a Bond film, and then the action sequence it's a legit, like, chase action sequence that's unto Mission Impossible or James Bond. There's a literal, like, this is how off the deep end this film has gone in terms of, like, logic or realism, like, whatsoever. A Velociraptor literally, like, does, like, a fucking, I don't know, secret agent jump through a window.
Oh, that was so funny. Yeah.
Not just, what's unbelievable? Not just the Velociraptor doing it, but then also fucking, like, Bryce Dallas Howard. Like,
she's an action star now.
She's an action star out of nowhere. Like, the amount of, like, jumps, like, she's literally jumping off buildings or jumping from roof to roof, and it's like, did we just cross into a different movie here?
You know what it felt like? It felt like it became like a Fast and Furious movie. Like, that's another thing.
That's how stupid it got.
Yeah. The level of stupidity was there. That middle part was very funny to me.
That's why I loved it, though. That's the best part of the movie, because it's just very funny.
There's a dude in a scooter that just gets eaten for no reason. I just laughed out loud. My poor man was just scooting along, and he didn't notice the two massive T-Rexes directly in front of him.
This was in a massive public square. Like, there was no way you couldn't notice it. He was just there strolling along. He like, huh? And then he gets picked up by a dinosaur.
And then he just
in the cantina. Well, it's not really a cantina, but in what we call the cantina.
I'm going to call it the cantina.
There's like fucking, that's where the T-Rexes get loose.
Yeah.
And no one around notices it.
In the background, you see the T-Rexes like fucking up the place. And then in the foreground, it's people like, rah, like betting the fighting of these animals against each other. And then the bad guy and the good guy. And it's just like, again, it's comical. Like a Indiana Jones / Star Wars type situation, right? It's the dinosaurs themselves just come off like I said, like obstacles. There's no heart or soul to them anymore.
No.
There's no like, you're not moved by anything that has to do with dinosaurs in this film.
No.
They just show up, they cause an action scene, and then it's over. They're not scary because there's no violence. The violence is non-existent. Like a guy gets like whoop, like gobbled up in the background, and that's it. That's all there is. But that whole sequence, they even throw in a female Indiana Jones with that lady character. You could tell Colin Trevorrow, he really likes that character archetype of like the rugged
DeWanda
badass.
Wise, the character that gets in halfway through and she flies.
Yeah. But I mean, that's literally what Chris Pratt's character was. Like that rugged, like, and having read the his Star Wars script, he basically turned Poe into Chris Pratt's character in Jurassic World. Like that same personality type, like that rugged, like kind of badass hero archetype with, slight humor. And then, he introduced another of the exact same character with her. It's weird.
Yeah.
Very weird. But then you have Biosyn, which again, if the entire point of the movie is dinosaurs all over the world, why are we having another park with another dinosaur sanctuary?
Right?
Why?
Why everything at this point?
Because the entire metaphor of the park breaking and falling apart is the incompatibility of humans and dinosaurs together. If humans and dinosaurs are thriving on the outside world, this park falling apart means nothing. Like, I feel nothing. There is no metaphor to it at all. It's just, you're just doing it because you just think you have to do it because that's what the other movies did. This is getting me angry. Why are we doing this? But that did lead to some of the funny stuff, is that Biosyn is a Death Star.
Oh my God, you're right. That's... Holy shit.
Biosyn is a Death Star. Our original heroes sneak into Biosyn, where everything has this like otherworldly spaceshipy look to it, and they're constantly they're disguised as Biosyn employees, rounding every corner, trying to sneak in, gain information, and then get out. And it just finally struck me. I'm like, oh my God, like they're pulling a Star Wars. We're throwing on the Stormtrooper outfit, sneaking around the base and then trying to sneak out.
The sets themselves look that they're inspired very much by that. And even the way he holds the camera felt like straight out of like something like Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. Like,
you can't make this shit up.
Like Alan Grant and what's her name?
Ellie Sattler.
Ellie Sattler. Like they walk down a hall and they're like, "Who's coming?" And then turn, and I'm like, it's like a shot directly out of Star Wars.
Yeah.
That's why I said, like, it feels like he couldn't let go of that Star Wars movie. He brought a lot of it into this film. This movie is just an amalgamation of, it feels like, every big blockbuster that he liked growing up. And then at the very end, he remembered, oh, it's a Jurassic movie. So he just redid the first movie again. Because that's all he knows. Dun, 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 dun.
Even, of course, like the music is just so horribly used here.
It's actually bad. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And it seems to confuse why it was that theme that we all know so well was a big thing in the first place. That was it was used in the original film to capture the wonder of dinosaurs, right? Well, because no one gives a shit anymore in this film, it's now reused as a theme for our original trio of characters, who, by the way, Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum, God bless them. They do their best here. And even when they do their best, you can see some spark in them. Like, they're still likable, but even they can't save what they're given.
It has that thing we talked about where there's 5,000 characters. None of them are ever in any danger. And they all need to have stuff to do. So none of them has enough time to actually develop anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they bring back the original characters for what? I don't know. They do nothing. The original characters have nothing. They introduce new characters, and again, I can see potential. They get basically nothing. It's...
The one that really aggravates me, though, is... Even in this situation, you can tell how much charisma there still remains between Neil, Dern, and Goldblum. Man, there's nothing with Howard or Pratt. And it gets even worse when you add in this clone girl, which makes both this one and last one so much more worse. Why was this here in the first place? It is so... I honestly... There was this whole scene when they're like diving in even further, which simultaneously acts as a retcon to the previous film and adds more lore, and I just tuned out. I did not care.
It's the Secrets of Dumbledore moment with fucking what's his name, Ezra Miller's character. It's like the same shit.
None of this matters.
Yeah.
Yet we spend so much time on it, and yet she's not very likable because not once but twice in these films she's doomed humanity.
Yeah, I wanted them to kill her. I wanted her to get eaten.
Because she's the whole reason they're even out in the world in the first place, first in that last film.
Yeah. I'm like, every time a dinosaur gets eaten, every time a human gets eaten by a dinosaur, that's on you, bitch.
And not just her, but then at this point also on Claire and Owen. They should be tried.
Yeah.
They should be prosecuted.
And then, what's his name? The scientist guy.
B.D. Wong.
B.D. Wong literally explains to her, like, listen, the world is going to die, but it won't. I can stop it if I can study your DNA. And you know, I can, and this is him like fucking pleading with her, like, I made a mistake, but we can fix it, da-da-da. He walks away. The first thing she does is run away.
No, she releases a raptor and then runs away.
Yeah. This is just like based on her decisions alone. This is the most unlikable character in the.
And that's saying something.
World.
And that's saying something in a movie where you have a cross between Steve Jobs and not Steve Jobs. I'm sorry, but Tim Cook and Elon Musk as like your corporate villain.
I had no idea he was supposed to be that one guy from the original Jurassic Park.
Can you believe that? No, but because it's not the same actor, but it's the same character. So keep in mind here, the main corporate villain here in this movie is one person who had one scene in the original film that gave Dennis Gertie, I think, the shaving cream can in the first place. Why?
Why? I mean, you know why. Nostalgia. But the idea that this, like, to me, it was so clear this is like some shady middleman between them and the company.
Yeah. In the first movie.
In the first movie, like, literally a nobody, a throwaway character. A grunt at most in this company. But then fast forward 20 plus years, and he's the Steve Jobs of the whole enterprise. Beyond ridiculous. Beyond stupid.
Beyond moronic.
every decision made, because they do everything, right? They go against what fans want, and then they give right into fan nostalgia. And every decision in both directions is the wrong one.
Every single decision.
It's like they keep turning left and right and around, and they're looking for a direction to go, and every time they turn, they step on a rake and hit themselves. Holy shit. And then, yeah, what you said, I have never seen Chris Pratt more unlikable.
I know, right?
Watching this movie, you would have no understanding why he's a movie star. Just like nothing. Devoid of any and all charisma. Like, I'm not... There's some weird Chris Pratt haters out there.
I know.
I'm not one of them.
No, I'm not either.
But watching this movie, it's like, fuck, like... It's hard to defend you. It's hard to see why... Like, yeah, if you had no idea who Chris Pratt was, and this was the first movie you saw him, you would have no idea why he has a career. None whatsoever.
You also spoke about how sanitized the film is. That the deaths didn't even...
Yeah. If you go... Well, it's probably because, you know, Jurassic Park, and even the sequels, when they were made, they were kind of meant to be movies. You know?
Right, yeah.
And in
How
the
about
first
that?
one, there are main characters you grow and kind of start to like, that die. They get eaten, you know, violently, especially in the second and the third movie.
Horrifically,
the second and third, right? And these are main characters that we grow and sort of spend time and get to know, and by the end, they will be eaten. In this movie, there's about 5,000 characters. Not one of them is ever for a second in any danger.
and even if they did get eaten, would you care?
No. But I mean, part of the fun of dinosaur movies, like, not to sound sadistic, but yeah, it's seen people get fucking eaten. That's part of the
people
fun.
Come to these movies in the first place.
Yes. It's like going to a slasher and being like, well, you know, no one had to die. Bitch, yes they do. That's part of the fun.
Yeah.
I need to
Except
see
Halloween
some
Kills.
good. Well, that movie had other problems. But that's the kills are part of the fun. And that's part of the danger. And that's part of the tension of the movie. And here, like, again, it just feels like a theme park.
Not even
like
a good one.
A real theme park. No, not even a good one. Like a fair. A county fair. Where shit's falling apart. Because the dinosaurs are just there to, like, have a chase scene. Just so our heroes can run and shoot. But not to be any real threats.
Mm-hmm.
Or cause any real damage to literally any character at all. Even the what do you call it? The evil Bond lady, James Bond villain.
Yeah, she's just there and then she gets arrested.
Have a raptor bite her arm off.
Yeah.
And then blood splurts everywhere. Why not? Movie bad.
I think Brendan Hodges at Metaplex Movies really, I think, put the whole thing in as concisely, and I'm not sure we've been concise, but like this whole ordeal. So this is what he said. Jurassic World Dominion wildly misjudges what anyone wants from the series. Instead of dinos feasting on humans in cool locations or whatever, it's mostly about bugs, farming, and crop failure. It feels like sitting through 65 million years of evolution in real time. Horrible. This is basically the worst case scenario in franchise filmmaking. Bland, boring, bloated, and has not one clue how to make us care about a single character besides cheap attempts at nostalgia. There is one good scene in a 2.5 hour long movie. This is 2.5 hours. Shit. I
don't even know what good scene he's talking about.
I know. I no longer have the ability to feel. Impressed by Trevorrow getting kicked off episode 9 to make a Rise of Skywalker of his own. From an overstuffed plot, a series of pointless fetch quests, numbing action scenes, and somehow a central part of the plot is also about family bloodlines and lineage. You cannot make this shit up, man. Seriously. Trevorrow is uniquely bad at making you care about characters, action, or story. There's a 30-minute stretch where two characters are racing to save another character who's actually saved by someone else almost that entire time. Spinning plates. You're given no reason to care. Dominion has a lot of problems, but one of the more depressing is how dinosaurs are no longer treated as deserving of awe. Trevorrow was weirdly casual about its main attraction, with dinos often demoted to background noise. Very few scenes are built around them. I have no idea why Trevorrow brought back the original cast. When Grant, Sattler, and Malcolm show up, the movie treats them with the fanfare of background extras. Remember the magic of Chewie were home in The Force Awakens? Fan service, yes, but at least you felt something. I challenge anyone who watches Dominion to tell me a single thing that the OG cast did that impacted the story. They're written suspiciously easy to cut out, as if the script was written on the basis they may not come back. It's another reason, of many, nothing feels like it matters. The villain in Jurassic Park is an overeager, excitable grandpa whose creation exceeded his grasp. The villain in Dominion is so evil he's risking the end of humankind and doesn't even care. What he cares about is selling crops. There are no genuine stakes in the entire movie. To wrap up, Dominion is just the most dispiriting, soul-sucking experience I've had in a movie theater since The Rise of Skywalker. Nothing in this movie matters, and I'm surprised it was made as is.
Bravo. I want to give a standing ovation to this movie. Like, that's such a great point about, like, the villain, too. Like, just a mustache twirling piece of shit. It's so easy to give him even, like, the slightest bit of gray and understanding. Is, you could say, like, well, maybe he has dementia. And he really wants to use genetic engineering, like they said, to fix that. You know, that's something. That's anything other than I shall take over the world. Mwahahaha.
With crops.
With crops. You don't understand the trade routes. Newt Gunray and his trade federation. The blockade of Naboo will help us start
You don't
a
understand.
war.
We have to capture the Chillin to sway an entire civilization to vote me into power.
Because it's gonna bow to me or some shit. But there was 2 Chillins. And now we must confuse everyone.
You're a Dumbledore. You're a Palpatine.
You're a clone.
You're a Hammond, I guess, or a clone. Charlotte, whatever.
Oh my god, how funny would that have been? I would have stood up and clapped in the theater. You're not actually a clone of your mother. You're a clone of John Hammond. Bum bum bum. That would have been great.
No, this is genuine. This is maybe the first time we can say in a long time. This is genuine garbage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Don't watch it. It's already made way too much money than it deserves. And as we've said at the beginning of this discussion, there are great blockbusters out there being made. Thank God. Worthy of your time. These last 2 ain't one of them. Especially this last
If you want to
one.
watch dinosaurs, just go watch the original movie.
Yeah.
Which holds up.
It's amazing. You could watch it. It could release in theaters today and be.
I'm so mad. I didn't realize it. We didn't go the day that we originally planned, but if we had, our theater had a double feature with the original movie and then this new one.
Oh, that would have been great. We could have just walked out after seeing the first one.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we didn't end up going that day because, things were moved around. But damn it, I would have liked to have seen that in the theater, the original one.
Yeah.
Anywho, speaking of better things to watch, you may be aware that David and I are reviewing Miss Marvel on a weekly basis, so there is that. Stay tuned for new episodes discussing the latest of Miss Marvel, and then also Obi-Wan Kenobi, which Peter and I discussed in a previous episode, I'm sure. So stay tuned for all that here under our spotlight, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.